Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. The friend collapsed to the ground. Next. All the way across the urban area, he found that he didn't need to go around people at all. He was like a ghost, like air, able to pass through all obstructions, stopping only when his body showed obvious fatigue. Awesome. It's too awesome, this extraordinary ability. Suddenly, Enel abruptly remembered the devil fruit that the adults had mentioned in jest. Sky Islanders knew more about devil fruits compared to East Blue people. It was probably similar to the Grand Line below. At least they knew its basic classifications: animal system, Paransha system, and Logia system. So, I've become a legendary devil fruit ability user. This boy, who had just turned 16, was now incredibly happy. Being an orphan, he had been looked down upon by the people on the island for years. Fortunately, he wasn't the only orphan, and he had made a few friends in similar situations. They would occasionally find some fruit or small animals on the outskirts of the jungle to fill their stomachs, thus stumbling along and surviving until now. He had fantasized more than once that if he had amazing superpowers, he could become a superior human here. Living in a big and beautiful house, eating carefully prepared delicious food, wearing the cleanest clothing, and ideally buying a waiver to speed across the White Sea. Now, his dreams seem to have come true? Right, I should go back quickly and show Bolo and the others. They'll definitely be very envious of me when they see it, and it will also make those bastards never dare to look down on me again. Enel once again manifested as Electric Flash, but this time he was slightly calmer. He began to calm down and try to control this ability. He quickly discovered that he could slow down his speed. After continuous adjustment, he could finally clearly observe the surrounding environment. Although his speed wasn't as astonishing as before. But it was still countless times faster than running with his own feet. In the blink of an eye, he was back in the lively urban area. However, the peace and beauty of the past were no longer here. The atmosphere was exceptionally nervous and sorrowful at this moment. Even the usual laughter had turned into mournful wails. Large numbers of people were gathered on the street, weeping bitterly around their relatives and friends on the ground. Ah! Suddenly, a woman's scream rang out. That thing is here again. Everyone on the street turned their heads in unison, following the woman's finger. Sure enough, they saw a blue electric flash rushing towards them. Run! In an instant, all the Burqa residents scattered, fleeing in all directions with faces full of terror. They didn't care if it was their own home or not, desperately looking for a house to hide in. But no matter how fast they ran, how could they compare to the electric flash? Even though this electric flash had slowed down countless times, this time it didn't sweep past but stopped in the middle of the street. What happened? Enel emerged from the electric flash, looking at the chaotic scene with a confused expression, occasionally glancing at the people lying on the ground. Enel. How could it be you? Quite a few people on the island knew Enel. After all, the orphan gang led by him often caused trouble by stealing things, such as cake, medicine, and clothing. It's me. Look quickly, I'm now a legendary devil fruit ability user. Enel hadn't realized what had happened here yet. Hearing someone call his name, he raised his right hand with a face full of excitement and released surging blue electric serpents on it. This should be electricity, right? Isn't it? But with his words and actions, the entire scene fell silent. Only the blowing wind and the crackling sound could prove that space hadn't frozen. The residents of Burqa Island stared intently at the electric current on Enel's arm. Especially those gathered around the remains of their relatives and friends, the anger on their faces grew thicker. You killed Garcia. You. Why did you kill Roll? He gave you bread before. Woo-wah-woo, give me back my dad. It was as if a suppressed volcano had finally erupted. Countless curses sprayed onto Enel like hot magma. This made Enel panic. He was at a loss, his mouth open, not knowing what to say. But in his heart, he gradually realized that he seemed to have caused a great disaster. Enel. Bolo is dead. Suddenly, that group of partners ran over, holding a boy's body and shouting with tears streaming down their faces. This made Enel instantly manifest as electric flash and appear before them. But this action of his terrified his partners. Not only did they fall to the ground, but they also desperately scrambled backward. Their gaze was like they were looking at a man-eating monster. How could this happen? Enel caught Bulwo, who was about to fall to the ground. He looked blankly at this corpse, which was completely charred and had long since lost its life. He finally understood. The reason he was unobstructed when running after manifesting as electric flash was because he had passed through everyone along the way. And these people, naturally, couldn't withstand such a strong electric shock. Get out of Burqa. You damned murderer, get out. Monster. 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 At this moment, the resident singer had reached its limit. They cursed wildly. Some even took out weapons, gnashing their teeth as they approached Enel. I didn't mean to. Enel shouted hoarsely at the people around him. It's because I just ate a devil fruit and couldn't control my body. But how could such words quell their anger and sorrow? Helplessly, not wanting to hurt anyone further, he could only hold his friend's remains, manifest as electric flash, and escape towards the jungle deep within the island. Why? How did things turn out like this? Enel's mood was very complex. Although there were many adults on the island he didn't like, there were also some who had helped him from time to time. He really didn't mean to kill anyone. This boy now just naively hoped that time could calm down the anger of those people. But he never thought about the future that awaited him next, being hated by everyone on the island for 17 whole years. Returning to the lush jungle. There were no longer those sounds full of malice in his ears, only clear bird cries that seemed to be comforting him. But he still felt those words monster lingering in his ears. Am I a monster? No, I'm not a monster. Enel held Bulwo's corpse. The pain, entanglement, and struggle on his face made his features look somewhat distorted. Lines of wrong tears streamed down from his eyes. But if I'm not a monster, then what am I? I killed people. This ultimate life question of who am I? If nothing unexpected happened, after more than 10 years of bitter contemplation, he would arrive at a very interesting conclusion. You are God's envoy, my envoy. Suddenly, a voice from high above sounded in the jungle. Who? Enel suddenly raised his head and looked around vigilantly. He even forgot to wipe the tears from his face. Dangerous and bright electric arcs subconsciously burst forth from his body. Most human lives are fragile. Diseases that are neither big nor small, collisions that are neither heavy nor light, even walking on a flat street, they will go to Yami due to various accidents and disasters. In most situations, the dead cannot be resurrected. You possess the ability of a natural disaster, so you are a natural disaster. Just consider those people you unintentionally killed as having died in a great calamity caused by a natural disaster. As for human hatred, it holds no meaning for a natural disaster itself. Enel looked around in a panic. Since he was young, he had the ability of mantra, able to hear sounds within a radius of 200 to 300 meters. It was also by this that he could lead his partners year-round, safely returning with harvests from this jungle filled with poisonous insects and wild beasts. However, now the range of his mantra seemed to have increased significantly. But even so, he couldn't find the source of this voice. It was as if, truly, God was watching him. Fly up, Enel. Use the power of the rumble to fly into the sky. Under the guidance of the Golden Bell, come and meet your God. Chapter 352, I will personally cut off Whitebeard's head. The sea star world was magnificent. Just as Im was stirring up huge waves in the sky, the gale stirred up by the world government, like a giant butterfly, caused the fate of many people on the seas to begin turning towards an unknown future. Tat 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 tat, roar roar roar, this place, filled with gun smoke, gunshots like rain, and gunfire flashes from explosions everywhere, was Gambino Island in the West Blue, the headquarters of the Peter family. As one of the 5 famous mafia families in this sea area, even large pirate crews were reluctant to provoke them. Because they had many humans and great influence, with plenty of guns and cannons. But today, there was such a brazen fellow who brought a group of humans and attacked their gate. The key was that the humans outside not only failed to stop them from landing earlier but were now being beaten back step by step, allowing that shorty, only 1.6 meters in height, to drive straight in. Damn it, why do they have so many bullets, and where in the world did these come from? Peter Mangano used the street-side building wall as cover, watching with furious gaze and gritted teeth as melon-like grenades flew everywhere, blowing the family members into disarray, making them not dare to even show their heads to counterattack. From before, those bastards from the Capone family had been using a large number of grenades to clear the way. After the explosions, each human had a machine gun and pushed forward. Yes, machine guns, not the submachine guns more commonly used by gangs. The reason they didn't use the former, which had greater power, wasn't because it was heavier, it wasn't that much heavier after all, but mainly because it consumed too many bullets. Moreover, gang shootouts, or even shootouts with pirates, were far from reaching the level of war, so there was no need for machine guns at all. But who would have thought, they actually encountered a group of strange lunatics. Have you found out where their ammunition supplies are coming from? No, leader, they are lightly equipped, it's impossible for them to carry so many ammo belts and grenades on them. Peter Mangano was helpless after hearing this. He could only watch as the continuous metal wind penetrated the walls, killing his humans one by one, or blowing them to death with wave after wave of grenades. 2 hours later, the gunshots on the island stopped abruptly. The streets, filled with shell craters and blast pits everywhere, were covered with a layer of yellow-orange shell casings. And the corpses of the Peter family members lay scattered in the pool of blood like rags. Among them, Peter Mangano was already separated from his corpse, his pale head staring ferociously at the clear blue sky. 3 days later. Absolutely not. On Castello Island, the headquarters of the Capone family, also located in the West Blue and one of the 5 great mafia families, a startling roar suddenly erupted, the sound filled with anger and disbelief. Old man, didn't we agree before that as long as I flattened one of the other 4 families, you would support me going out to sea to find Whitebeard? Standing before his father, who looked exactly like him but with many wrinkles, was a young man only 1.6 meters in height and just 19 years old, but with a somewhat mature appearance. He narrowed his eyes and spoke in an ice-cold tone. Are you trying to break your promise and play me? Capone Al opened his mouth, unsure how to answer. Before, he had only proposed a virtually impossible requirement just to dismiss his son's idea of going out to sea. But who would have thought, in less than a month's time, this kid first took out 2 important territories of the Peter family, then released news of an impending attack on a 3rd island, and even actually sent out about 100 humans. Then, taking advantage of the large number of humans from the Peter family leaving their headquarters, he directly led the remaining 100 or so humans to forcefully attack Gambino Island. Logically, this shouldn't have been possible. The island must have still had hundreds of mafia members and a large number of coastal defense cannons guarding it. But somehow, he succeeded. As for the 100 humans who were sent out, they unexpectedly became sacrificial pawns. However, neither the father nor the son cared about this at all. Cruelty and cold-bloodedness were the Capone family's style. Their heirs, from the time they could walk, would use real blades and real guns as toys, and would often have arrangements to play war games with other children. Games where humans actually died. Growing up in this kind of nurturing environment, it could be said that the relationship between each generation of Capone fathers and sons was ice cold. The so-called bond was just bloodline inheritance and family inheritance. Budge, whether Whitebeard joins the world government or not, what the hell does it matter to you? Capone Al shouted in anger. This child, for some reason, ever since he saw the news that Whitebeard had accepted the world government's incorporation, founded the Whitebeard Kingdom, joined the command department, and was granted the honorary Grand General rank and epithet, he had been shouting like crazy that it was impossible, and even wanted to form a fleet to go to the New World to ask the other party for an explanation. Because Whitebeard is definitely not a man who would compromise for wealth and glory or bow his head because of the world government's threat. There must be a big problem here. Capone Budge said coldly. Simply put, Whitebeard was his idol, and he was a worshipper of Whitebeard. In any case, he was determined to go to the New World. How do you know he's not that kind of person? Have you ever met him? In this world, is there anyone who doesn't pursue wealth and glory? Is there anyone who isn't afraid of death? Capone Al was truly going crazy with anger. This was his only heir. What kind of place was the New World? Putting everything else aside, you first have to cross the West Blue, pass Reverse Mountain, and then go through the New World to get there. Do you even need to calculate the probability of encountering danger along the way? You are my father, so I'm giving you one chance. If you insult Whitebeard again, I will kill you. Capone Budge lit his cigar with a lighter, his expressionless face giving a cold warning, then said. If I confirm that he is truly a man who disappoints me, I will personally cut off his head. Capone Al's eye twitched when he heard this. Finally, let me tell you, I am definitely going out to sea. And I will return after meeting Whitebeard. When I do, I will destroy the other 4 families and let the Capone family unify the West Blue underworld. After speaking, Capone Budge, with the smoking cigar in his mouth, turned and walked towards the gate, but heard his father's angry roar from behind. Is Whitebeard your father, or am I your father? What world's strongest man? Wake up. He's already become the world government's dog. Bang, a sudden gunshot rang out, startling the nearby guarding gang members. They watched in shock as the young master turned around and shot the family head through the forehead without hesitation. Capone Budge's gaze was so cold. His sight passed through the green smoke from the muzzle, watching his father fall to the ground with a face full of disbelief, staring blankly at the luxurious power ceiling. "I told you, I'd kill you if you cursed him again. And you dared to break your promise with me? You're seeking death." Caponebridge slowly walked over and looked coldly at the old man on the ground who was 90% similar to himself, then raised his head and scanned the surrounding family subordinates. "From now on, I am the family head of the Capone family. I call the shots here. You can go prepare a sea ships and supplies." Young Mass. "Ah, no, family head, if we leave, what will happen if the humans from the other families attack?" a subordinate asked, gathering his courage. "Take all the treasure, food, and weapons and ammo with you. As for these territories, they won't run away. We'll just take them back when we return, and wipe them out while we're at it." Caponebridge answered him patiently, but as soon as his voice fell, he suddenly raised his pistol and shot the other person through the forehead, startling the other members again. "Good question. Don't ask again next time." He hated it most when his humans disobeyed or questioned his orders. But at this moment, an arrogant laugh rippled out inside the court like invisible waves. "Foo, that was quite a show. Kid, you're pretty good. It wasn't in vain for me to personally bring you the letter of appointment. Chapter 353, 7 Warlords of the Sea, Thunder Dragon." Crackling sounds, a streak of blue electric flash shot from the jungle in the center of Burka Island to the high altitude, drawing a long line of light that attracted the hostile gaze of many residents in the edge urban area. But Enel at this moment didn't notice this, instead fully enjoying the joy of rapidly flying into the sky. "I'm really flying." The 16-year-old boy, his whole body radiating electric flash, looked excitedly at the sun, which was clearly larger, coupled with the white wings on his back. He was like a devout angel. But since he was an angel, he naturally needed a god to serve. Enel kept scanning his surroundings, trying to find the god who guided him. Just then, a melodious bell sound came from a very far distance. As soon as this sound reached his ears, another bell sound immediately rang out. There. Enel listened carefully, and by the third sound, he had determined the direction of the sound source. Instantly, he transformed into surging lightning and flew across the sky following the guidance of the bell sound. Just as the bell rang for the 10th time, he finally saw a screen feed that would be etched in his memory forever. A gigantic white ship comparable to Burka Island, like a deity's palace from legend, lay prostrate hundreds of meters in the high altitude of the White Sea. The hull's surface was lined with densely packed gold cannon barrels. The 5-story ship tower, with each floor's height reaching over 10 meters, made one suspect that the residents inside might not be human, but giants. But none of this was as eye-catching as the golden belfry standing on the incredibly vast deck. A blue-scaled python, over 30 meters long with long white feathers on both sides, was seen striking the side of the golden bell with its snake tail. Doing, immediately, just as Enel, who had manifested as lightning, landed on the deck, the 11th bell sound was heavily struck by it. This sound was actually very loud, one could even faintly see rings of air ripples in the air, yet there was no deafening discomfort. Instead, combined with the brilliant gold light, it created a wonderfully sacred atmosphere. "I am Stussy, Secretary General to Lord Saint Nerona. By order, I am to bring you to the empty hall to meet the Lord." Seeing the blonde woman in a black dress turn and leave after speaking, Enel quickly trotted after her. Immediately after, the golden bell behind them was struck for the 12th time. This made him subconsciously turn his head to look, and he saw the giant blue snake retracting into the attic below the belfry. That is Lord of the Sky Kukulkan. It's an ancient giant snake that has lived for over 400 years. By the Lord's order, it is responsible for guarding the Ark's deck and striking the golden bell on time. Stussy said indifferently without turning her head, while leading the way in her high heels. 400 years. Enel secretly clicked his tongue. Looking at the armored riders in column on both sides, he hesitantly asked, "Excuse me, who are you people? Or are you truly deities?" "We are members of the world government, and here is St. Nerona's Sky Palace, Noah's Ark." Along the way, Enel learned many matters from Stussy. The most important information, naturally, was about the world government and the celestial dragons. But the young boy still had doubts in his heart. It sounded like there were many celestial dragons, and the Saint Nerona he was about to meet wasn't even the highest rank among the celestial dragons. Weren't there still the 5 elders above him? This made him a bit unhappy. If the god who had previously spoken to him from afar was truly this Saint Nerona, then Enel would have preferred that the other party was the only and most noble existence. It must be said, the deck of this ark was truly large enough. Stussy and Enel walked normally, taking a full 10 minutes or more to step through the gate on the first floor of the ship tower. Despite this, Stussy still had no intention of speeding up. In this solemn environment, the latter also didn't dare to carelessly use his lightning ability. Wow! When Enel saw the space inside the ship tower, he felt as if the entire world had changed. The visual impact of its unparalleled height and luxury reaching the limit of imagination made him unable to move his feet anymore. He foolishly scanned this gold and magnificent world. This place was simply countless times more shocking than any Jingu he had ever heard of. "Let's go." Stussy patiently waited for him for 2 minutes before speaking to remind him. Enel suddenly woke up, his heart surging, and walked on the incredibly soft red carpet. But after a short while, he let out another exclamation. Good heavens, what did he see? Giant. A giant wearing gold blood-patterned armor, holding a gold blood-patterned giant axe, with a gold-armored face mask, and a white cloak fluttering behind him, estimated to be nearly 20 meters tall. This golden giant was seen guarding the silver stairs leading to the second floor, standing motionless like a statue, allowing Stussy, with a face full of shock, and Enel to pass by him. Just as Enel was wide-eyed and about to ask, upon reaching the second floor, he saw another golden giant. However, this one had his back to them, and the weapon in his hands seemed to have become a large gold axe held with both hands. Giant God. Enel softly read out the 2 large Chinese characters on the white cloak. They are the giant god soldiers under Saint Nerona. They are mainly responsible for guarding these 5 floors of the ship tower. Stussy continued to introduce as she walked. Next, they indeed saw 3 more golden giants with slightly larger body sizes, which made Enel's impression of that god even deeper. If the people of Burka Island knew about everything here, they would probably also consider it the descent of deities, right? Finally, the 2 arrived at the 5th floor, continued through various gardens, lakes, plazas, and buildings, finally arriving before the gate of a magnificent palace located in the center. This is the empty hall. Next, you will go in by yourself. Remember, when you reach a distance of about 20 meters from the throne, kneel down. Do not have any disrespectful words or actions. Otherwise, even if you manage to walk out of there, I will be the first to kill you. Stussy's attitude suddenly turned cold. She looked at Enel expressionlessly, giving him a warning, and then vanished from the spot with a whoosh. Leaving Enel speechless, standing rooted to the spot. A moment later, he pushed open the somewhat heavy gate with force and walked in. Immediately, he saw that there seemed to be only 2 people inside, a blond strong man dressed in luxurious gold clothing standing below the platform, and another white figure seated on the high and mighty throne. Enel walked over with a face full of nervousness, then stopped at the position about 20 meters away, according to Stussy's instructions. He just didn't know what to say. Enel, there are 3 ultimate questions in life: who am I, where do I come from, and where am I going? Previously, I told you the first question, you are my god's envoy. Did not refer to himself as this saint at this time, because saint could be used by all celestial dragons. Referring to himself as Saint Nerona was fine, but it was inappropriate for him to speak as him now. Now I will tell you the remaining 2 questions. Where do you come from? This world was created by me 1,000 years ago, so all life in this world, including you, originates from me and thus comes from me. Where are you going? You have already arrived at where you are going, which is here with me. Even if you die for me in the future, your soul will return to my side. Enel listened with a blank expression, while Tesoro next to him had a composed expression. When your strength reaches the basic requirements for a god's envoy, I will bestow upon you the identity of a 7 warlords of the sea, serving as my representative in the world and a publisher of divine oracles, on the same level as the 5 elders, with no need to kneel before celestial dragons. Your epithet will be Thunder Dragon. Lord Saint Nerona. Just as young Enel wanted to say something, a cold voice with no discernible emotion came down from above. As a future god's envoy, you need to engrave my true name deep within your soul. I am. Chapter 354, Where is the Dark King? Bang, Lord Amu, seated calmly on the empty throne, watched as the gate slowly obscured the retreating figures of Enel and Tesoro, his gaze primarily focused on Enel. The thunder god Enel from the canon. This was an extremely popular character in his previous life. After many transmigrators arrived in the Sea Star world, if the timing was right, they would definitely go to Burka and try to intercept his Logia system rumble fruit. And if they found that he had already eaten it, they would definitely try to recruit him. Many people said that the reason so many liked Enel was purely because the rumble fruit was simply too powerful, too magnificent, almost perfect. There was some truth to this. But Enel's own arrogance, wildness, willfulness, his proud posture of calling himself a god, and his persistence in pursuing his dream, also held considerable charm. His trip to Burka this time, the other party could indeed be considered a great gain. If he could find that thing, then even the Thunder God would have to take second place. He hoped it was there. Thinking of this, he vanished from the empty throne. Immediately after, the gate opened again, and the 9 female royal guards in silver armor and silver bows once again took over the guard duty of this main hall. At the same time, the massive Noah's Ark arrived above Burka Island, casting a vast shadow. This momentarily made the residents, who were grieving the deaths of their loved ones, forget these sad matters. They collectively raised their heads, staring dumbfounded, frozen in place. Immediately after, they saw two small ships flying down. Compared to the Noah's Ark, they looked like two seagulls flying beside a sea ship. But as these small ships got closer and closer to the ground, everyone suddenly realized they weren't small at all. They had never seen such large ships in their lives, and they could even fly. When the two flying warships landed on the beaches on either side, one in the south and one in the north, large numbers of armored knights poured into Burka like a tide. Their teams were spread out, seemingly intending to surround the entire Sky Island from both ends. Strangely, apart from a portion of the armored knights entering the urban area to control the panicked Sky Islanders, most of the armored knights actually walked into the dense jungle in the center of the island for exploration. And it was a complete carpet search, almost to the point of holding hands as they advanced deeper. If the Sky Island creatures in the jungle merely fled, they wouldn't pay much attention, but if they dared to attack, their fate was to be killed on the spot. The power of automatic rifles loaded with jet bullets was no joke. It was a complete sweep. This also caused gunshots to ring out across Burka Island for a time, terrifying the Sky Islanders in the edge urban areas, making them tremble in fear that the surrounding armored knights would shoot them. On the other side, young Enel was following the young Tesoro, who was preparing to take the former to his residence to host him. As future 7 warlords of the sea, they were qualified to obtain their own exclusive manor and villa, complete with servants, on the top floor of the Noah's Ark. Tesoro had a cheerful and straightforward personality and actively sought to build rapport with Enel. How old are you this year? Just 16. Tesoro looked at Enel, who was already 1.80 m tall, with surprise. Although he was about 20 centimeters shorter than himself, this was enough to indirectly prove the other party's extraordinary aptitude. Of course, height wasn't the main standard for measuring aptitude, but it could serve as a reference. Ha, I'm 2 years older than you. From now on, just call me brother. Okay. Enel didn't mind, he nodded, and then asked. Brother Tesoro, are you also a 7 warlord of the sea? No. Tesoro shook his head. Didn't Lord Imu say that to become a god's envoy, your strength must meet the basic requirements? This requirement is to master all the basic 6 powers, skillfully master your devil fruit ability, and develop armament hockey and observation hockey. So, you and I can only be considered quasi-7 warlords of the sea. But I should be close. Among the 6 powers, only moonwalk and paper arts haven't been mastered. As for observation hockey, I still have no clue. Speaking of this, Tesoro sighed deeply. Then what is your ability, brother? And your epithet? Enel was like a curious child, as if he had 100,000 questions. Tesoro didn't mind. He raised his right palm, which was covered in gold rings, revealing a handsome smile, and began to activate his ability. I am a Parimsha System Gold Fruit ability user. My ability is to manipulate gold. As for the epithet, he saw him grasp the gold dagger formed from the melted rings, and raised his chin proudly. Golden Emperor. The epithet Lord Imu gave me is Thunder Dragon. Enel merely glanced at the gold dagger in Tesoro's hand. In his opinion, this ability to manipulate gold was insignificant compared to his own ability. Thunder? Tesoro suddenly stopped, turned his head in surprise, and asked. Could you be a Logia system ability user? Yes. Young Enel smugly curled his lips, instantly used element transformation to appear 100 meters away, and then flashed back to the original spot. Although I don't know the specific name of this ability yet, it's definitely Logia system. It should be called the Rumble fruit. I've seen the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia before. The number of Logia system fruits isn't many, so it's easy to remember. Tesoro said with considerable envy. But just as Enel was getting carried away, an extremely pleasant female voice sounded in his ear. It turned out they had already arrived at the manor gate of Tesoro's manor. You're back, Tesoro. And this is? He saw a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman of incredible beauty come out to greet the two, accompanied by 4 maids behind her, while looking at Enel with curiosity. The latter was somewhat dazed. Although there were many angelic beautiful women on Burka Island, none had truly reached Stella's rank. Moreover, he was still young and hadn't experienced a long period of pain and suffering, so he was truly amazed. This is Enel, 16 years old this year. He's a brother I just recognized, and also a genius chosen by Saint Nerona. Tesoro walked over with a face full of tenderness, naturally hugged her slender waist, and smiled at Enel. Her name is Stella, she's my wife. Come on, let's take a bath first, then have a lavish dinner. Okay. Enel was very envious of Tesoro at this moment and suddenly felt that the Rumble fruit wasn't appealing anymore. A moment later. The brothers who had just met were naked and open with each other in a luxurious large bathhouse comparable to a royal palace. Enel soaked in the hot water pool, shaking his head, no longer thinking about Stella. He was just amazed. He didn't place much importance on female beauty itself. Brother Tesoro, so I also have to train in those 6 powers and hockey starting tomorrow? Yes. Tesoro rested one arm on the edge of the pool, closed his eyes, enjoying the warmth from the hot water, and said, "However, to master the 6 powers and hockey, your physical ability must first meet the requirements." That instructor said it's something like 500 Doriki value. Is it hard? Enel asked worriedly. It's quite tiring at first, but once your body gets used to it, it only takes a little over 2 months. You should be about the same. Tesoro spoke so casually about the matters that most people would need to train desperately for several years, or even 10 years, to achieve. Although this was indeed his real experience. At this time, the sky outside had entered late night. Looking at the stars filling the sky from this 10,000 meters high altitude, they were truly brilliantly dazzling, enough to baptize one's heart. Expressionless, looked at Stussy and asked. So, you didn't find it? I am very sorry, Saint Nerona. The Holy Land garrison has thoroughly searched both inside and outside Burka Island, including underground, twice, but still hasn't found the giant battleship you mentioned. Stussy replied quickly with nervousness, which made him slightly furrow his brow, causing the atmosphere to become even more solemn and solidified. Cold sweat had already broken out on the former's forehead. In fact, was just thinking. Was my previous speculation wrong? The Dark King isn't here? Then where could it be? Here, I solemnly recommend Hidden Leaf Village, Naruto taught by Aizen by the author Check Cat Litter Shoveler. This is a high-quality Naruto fanfiction that reached 30,000 collections right after going premium. Readers who enjoy Naruto fanfiction can go check it out. I believe it won't disappoint anyone. Chapter 355, Air Force Admiral Kizaru and Army Major Bedge. In the first half of the Grand Line, on both sides below Reverse Mountain, the lighthouses, originally one on the left and one on the right, had now been painted with the characteristic Marines blue paint and white seagull icons. 6 headquarters-level massive warships were anchored 300 nautical miles away from the entrance and exit, to the east and west, aiming the 2 rows of gun barrels on their broadside and the triple-barreled turrets on their deck simultaneously at the sea ships lining up in the center, waiting for inspection. At the same time, a Navy base, featuring clusters of sky blue castles, stood tall. Its massive area, comparable to an island, completely blocked the front of Reverse Mountain. Ships passing through, after completing a series of inspections, could only diverge to the left and right sides, and then choose one of the 7 routes for their voyage. This was the newly established G0 branch of the Marine headquarters. Since its appearance here, almost everyday pirate ships from the 4 seas would rush down from below Reverse Mountain, throwing themselves into the net. It perfectly demonstrated the effect of waiting by the stump for a rabbit. The Marines assigned to this branch were both happy and pained by this situation. The happiness came from not needing to patrol everywhere or chase pirate ships across the Great Sea like other branches, while the pain was having to endure high-density and high-intensity combat almost every day. Especially when the rumors of One Piece were at their peak, they didn't even have time to eat a proper meal in the cafeteria. Pirate ships, large and small, surged down like a continuous sardine school. At that time, the prison inside the base was full, cannonball reserves were once depleted, and the casualty rate even reached the highest among all G branches. One must know that previously, the branches in the New World usually had the highest casualty rate. Fortunately, Base Commander Kizaru was capable enough. Each light beam he fired accurately blasted the pirate crews that were stronger or almost escaped. However, the number of pirate has decreased significantly recently, but the Marines' work hasn't become easier because of this. Fewer pirate means the sea situation is safer, especially in the sea areas of the 4 seas where the climate is relatively stable. This directly led to a sharp increase in civilian ships like merchant ships and cargo ships. This is certainly a good thing. But their base also serves as customs, which is why the spectacular scene of sails like clouds and ships stretching for 1,000 miles has appeared now. This again resulted in the ship flow being too dense, almost filling the sea surface between Reverse Mountain and the G0 base, often causing problems of ship collisions or sea route blockages. So, what should they do? The Marines have to act as sea traffic police. In short, they are busy, extremely busy. The Marines and government officials within the base are living extremely fulfilling yet overwhelmed lives every day because of the busyness. But no matter how busy they are, it's only the people below who are tired, not Borsellino. In the base chief's office, he was seen lazily lying on a wide chair, his legs resting on the office desk, picking up the transponder snail that had just started ringing. Yo, isn't his fleet Admiral Sengoku? You actually have time to call me? However, the other end of the handset remained silent, which made Borsalino glance strangely at the transponder snail. Because the transponder snail imitates the caller's expression, he found the transponder snail looking serious and helpless. After a moment, Sengoku finally spoke. Borsalino, the latest order from the command department, you are being transferred to Air Force headquarters and promoted to Air Force Admiral. This left Borsalino speechless. He put his legs down from the desk, but he always goes with the flow and didn't dwell on it too much. Then he asked. I just became an admiral candidate. Is my military merit enough for a promotion to admiral? It's enough. The number of pirate you and your branch dealt with at Reverse Mountain is almost the total of the other few branches in the first half of the Grand Line. Then who will replace me? Sengoku, in the Fleet Admiral's office at Marine Headquarters, said expressionlessly, Kyuzen. Oh. Borsalino understood. This was to let Kyuzen earn military merit at Reverse Mountain, to prepare him for his upcoming promotion to Marine Admiral. That place, Fishman Island, should have no pirate now. Keeping Kyuzen there would truly be a waste of time. But Mr. Sengoku, my strength isn't enough to be an admiral, is it? Hearing this bastard directly change his address and no longer call him Fleet Admiral, a string of black lines appeared on Sengoku's forehead. This is an appointment from the command department, and Sakazuki, who is similar to you, isn't he also an army general now? That's true. Borsalino mumbled. Then where is Air Force headquarters? Do I need to wait for Kyuzen to arrive before reporting? In Elbai on Sky Island. The specific position will be sent to you later, but it is said that it hasn't been fully constructed yet, so you don't need to rush. Sengoku cursed inwardly, are you in such a hurry to leave the Marines? Also, you need to go to the Red Line immediately. The command department wants you to participate in the upcoming Otherworld Conquest. Otherworld Conquest, huh? Sounds terrifying. Borsalino twisted his mouth with a look of refusal. Those 4 words sounded particularly troublesome. Then he asked curiously, are you going to? Yes, both Garp and I have received the order. Besides us, Whitebeard, Big Mom, Kaido, and others will also be going. By the way, Kaido, like you, has been appointed as an Air Force Admiral. You should be careful. Sengoku said expressionlessly. Borsalino felt even more troubled. Thinking of Kaido, an azure dragon drinking heavily and drunk appeared in his mind. Alright, I understand. Oh, one last question, Mr. Sengoku. How are the salary and benefits at Air Force headquarters? Are they higher than here in the Marines? Hearing this sentence coming from the handset, the veins on Sengoku's forehead suddenly bulged. Get lost. Slap. Borsalino looked at the hung-up transponder snail in surprise, twisting his mouth and complaining, why is Mr. Sengoku so angry? Was he angered by Mr. Garp again? Anyway, he felt that the question he asked was very normal. Isn't the treatment issue the most important thing? Hope it's more comfortable over at the Air Force. Red Line, RL 1557, the Stargate base leading to the Demon Slayer world. Something here seemed to have changed. Logically, there should still be a long time before the 200,000 army soldier enter the Demon Slayer world. But now, the long queues were gone. Instead, on the open ground outside the base, they were lined up in a rather spectacular massive square formation. At this moment, a man wearing the Army's black justice coat, a black gentleman's hat on his head, and a cigar in his mouth walked out from the main gate of the base and stood at the front. It was Kaponbaj, who was only 1.66 meters tall. That day, he fought a battle with Doflamingo, and after losing, he was brought here. He heard that he would be able to see Whitebeard here in a few days, so he settled down and became an army major. First 3 rows, step forward. Bang, the army soldier who were called out all took a step forward in unison. The footsteps they made shook the red sand. Kaponbaj began to activate his castle fruit ability. His entire body rapidly expanded, turning into a small fortress 5 meters high and 6 meters wide in the blink of an eye. His devil fruit ability would increase the castle's volume, internal space, and surface defense along with his own strength. Therefore, this castle was far from as large as the big boss in the canon 23 years later. But regardless, it was still much larger than the Stargate, which was only 2 meters wide. Come in, quickly. As Kaponbaj's order was given, the 3 rows of army soldier, holding automatic rifles, walked quickly in a long line into the wide-open fortress main gate. Chapter 356, 8th Admirals arrive in the Demon Slayer world. Sea Star World, Marine Calendar 1499, March 11th. Demon Slayer World, Common Era Calendar 1913, July 1st. Thanks to Kaponbaj's hard work, 20,000 elite army soldiers were assembled within the Okigahara forest through the Stargate more than a month ahead of schedule. At this time, The Foot Basin Chicken government had just begun to recover from the disaster caused by the super sandstorm and the destruction of Ekoji City. But they ultimately failed to discover the origin of the sandstorm, nor did they know the reason behind the great fissure that split Ekoji City. Citizens in various places gradually began to forget these events and return to their peaceful lives. Only when newspapers mentioned the tense situation in Europe would it spark scattered discussions. Everyone in the Foot Basin Chicken country likely never dreamed that beneath Mount Fuji, which they revered as a sacred mountain, a dense black army was already hidden. Within the Other World Strategy Committee on the Sea Star mainland, everyone's minds were tense. Has this day finally arrived? Chairman Fernandez sighed, looking at the large screen wall composed of dozens of smaller screens. All high-level combatants have arrived and are entering Caponebach's fortress, preparing to pass through Stargate number 0002. A technician sitting at the control panel in front raised his head and reported in a deep voice, watching Caponebach walk into the biochemical safety station on the screen, preparing to undergo the disinfection process. Chairman, everything that needed to be said has been said. Let's leave the rest to them. We'll just be responsible for cleaning up the mess they leave behind. Kong Ming, as the vice chairman, chuckled softly while holding his feather fan. That's true. Meanwhile, in the Demon's Lair world's Okagahara forest, within the Stargate camp, the outermost electric gate of the biochemical safety station quickly opened, and Caponebach walked out wearing a black coat. This is the final wave. He had naturally already met Whitebeard. The other party was currently inside him. After the intense impact on his three views from the Stargate and the other world, he had completely understood the other party's choice. However, there was one thing Caponebach didn't understand. Whitebeard said he was no longer the world's strongest man. What did that mean? Putting his thoughts aside, he still had important business to attend to. Transforming back into his humanoid fortress form, he opened a wide iron door on his chest and simultaneously sank his consciousness into his body, speaking to the big shots inside. You can come out now. At the same time, Crocodile, who had arrived in the Demon Slayer world earlier, waited nearby with a cigar in his mouth, accompanied by Mima Amatori and a group of army officers behind him. Am I going to see that bastard bullet again? How annoying. Mima Amatori naturally didn't dare to respond to his words, merely watching the dark fortress exit with some nervousness. He had heard that among the people coming this time, there were 8 big shots with the admiral rank alone, and dozens of people who were vice admirals like Crocodile. Soon, a series of heavy footsteps echoed from within. 2 tall figures were seen walking out side by side. The one on the left was 3 meters tall, wearing a red suit paired with a black justice coat. His serious face held a determined gaze, and his strong aura surged forward like a tangible force. Admiral Akanyu. Mima Amatori was quite familiar with this person, having personally witnessed him brutally beat Crocodile and Bullet. His posture, like that of a magma god, was still deeply etched in his memory. But he didn't recognize the other person. However, his height was even greater than Admiral Akanyu's, and he looked even sturdier. He wore a black suit with a white shirt and a black tie, had a face full of raw flesh and a tea-green beard, and especially his 2 arms were thick and long, like the cannon barrels of Narukami. That's Army General, Black Rhino Burned-Eye World. You'd best not provoke him. He's much stronger than that mad dog. Crocodile reminded him in a low voice. Hearing this, Mima Amatori looked at Burned-Eye World in shock. Admiral Akanyu was already an invincible existence in his heart. Could there be someone even stronger than him? Following Admiral Akanyu and Black Rhino was a group of army lieutenant generals, each with their own characteristics but all exuding a killing intent. They were all draped in wide black justice coats. Standing at the front of the group, second only to the 2 admirals ahead, was naturally the Army Admiral candidate Ghost Shark Bullet. Behind him was a wide-chinned man also 3 meters tall, with a cigar in his mouth. However, the evil smile on his face and his pupils, which faintly glowed red, made Mima Amatori's hair stand on end. He gave off a feeling of being even more dangerous than Admiral Akanyu and Admiral Black Rhino. That's Shiryu of the Rain, the Mad Dog's adjutant. A lunatic who kills for pleasure. Don't go near this man, it's best to stay by my side. Crocodile warned, lightly biting his cigar, his eyes filled with apprehension. After this group of army personnel, there were 3 more figures nearly 3 meters tall, making Mima Amatori wonder if all the powerhouses in the Sea Star world were this tall. What was the concept of 3 meters? The height of 1 floor, the height from the floor to the ceiling in a standard apartment. However, these 3 people all wore white justice coats paired with complete white suits. Mima Amatori recognized them and said softly. Fleet Admiral Sengoku the Buddha, Marine Admiral Iron Fist Garp, Navy Admiral candidate Tokiji Kyuzen. He became curious again. Between these 3 and Admiral Akanyu, who was stronger and who was weaker. He couldn't help it. This heavens chosen from the Kubanrai world's impression of admiral-level combat power in the Sea Star world was limited to Sakazuki. But Mima Amatori didn't ask the question, because they had already come out. What if asking too much caused trouble? Following closely behind were 4 figures wearing blue justice coats. Needless to say, it was another group of giants. Oh, what a grand display. Even they've come? Can this world truly withstand such ravaging? Crocodile raised an eyebrow in surprise upon seeing the newcomers. Vice Admiral, who are they? Mima Amatori said he only recognized the Navy Admiral candidate Kizaru. But why didn't he come out with Sengoku and the others ahead, and why had the color of his justice coat changed? They should be the newly established Air Force. Looking at the shoulder insignia on their coats, Kizaru has become an Air Force Admiral, Kaido is also an Admiral, and the 2 Air Force Vice Admirals behind them seem to be King from the former Beast Pirates and Phoenix Marco from the former Whitebeard Pirates. Speaking of this, Crocodile seemed to remember something else and narrowed his eyes, turning his gaze to the group of Army Lieutenant Generals beside him. Right, I knew some of these people looked familiar. Diamond Jazu from the former Whitebeard Pirates, Flower Sword Vista, Charlotte Day Ithaca from the former Big Mom Pirates, Charlotte Oven, Charlotte Cracker. Suddenly, a lightning bolt flashed through his mind, and Crocodile abruptly looked back at the fortress main gate, thinking. So, could it be that they too? Indeed. When the final 2 figures, far taller and with even more terrifying aura than the people before them, stepped onto the land of the Demon Slayer world and walked out. His eyes instantly widened, and the cigar in his mouth loosened slightly, looking as if it was about to fall to the ground. At the same time, this man and woman became the star attractions within the Stargate camp, drawing everyone's attention. Although they didn't belong to any specific military branch, they were both granted the honorary admiral rank by the command department. Whitebeard Edward Newgate. Big Mom Charlotte Linlin. Chapter 357, Arduous Mission. An 8.8-meter tall, voluptuous pink-haired beauty, wearing a pink captain's hat, her face filled with excitement and a greedy smile. A 6.66-meter tall, robust blonde man, sporting an iconic white crescent moon beard, the large Quan Dao in his hand glinting coldly under the sunlight. The publicly recognized world's strongest man and world's strongest woman of the Sea Star world. Hearing Crocodile's introduction, Mima Amatori deeply carved the appearance of these 2 people into his mind. In his heart, the Sea Star world was an existence equivalent to the divine realm. In such a world, to be called the world's strongest meant they were absolutely monsters among monsters. Since everyone has arrived, let's move to the meeting room. I will introduce the upcoming operation plan and the missions everyone will be responsible for. Crocodile took 2 steps forward and, under the powerful gaze of the many admirals, admiral candidates, and elite vice admirals, fearlessly scanned everyone. Although he was just a vice admiral, he was the army commanding officer of the Demon Slayer world. After these big shots leave, if there are any subsequent military operations, such as a rebellion occurring somewhere, he will still be responsible for suppressing it. Just like the Kubanrai world is currently overseen by Bullet. Therefore, no one raised objections to Crocodile. In the blink of an eye, everyone gathered in a relatively simple but sufficiently spacious meeting room within the camp. Crocodile stood at the front of the meeting table. On the whiteboard behind him was a large map of Japan and a large map of the Demon Slayer world, surrounded by high-definition photos of various target locations. Sitting on the left side of the meeting table were Sengoku, Garp, Sakazuki, Borslino, Kuzn, Shiryu, Onigamo, Doberman, Stainless, and others. While on the right side sat Newgate, Linlin, Ward, Bullet, Kaido, King, Marco, Jazu, Oven, and others. It could be seen that the 2 sides were not seated according to military branch at all, and there was quite a distinct separation. This was why the 5 elders wanted to sacrifice the Demon Slayer world and insisted on having these people jointly participate, the reason for this first Otherworld war. Although in terms of identity they were already their own people, in their thought they still habitually divided into Marines and pirates. This was a very obvious hidden danger. Therefore, these people must thoroughly understand that from now on their stance is no longer Marines and pirates, but world and otherworld. Everyone should have already known about the basic situation of this world before coming. Crocodile didn't care about this confrontational atmosphere between the 2 sides at all, but completely treated himself as the commander of this war. In this world, besides Mizan Kibutsuji and those demons who have already been dealt with, there are no individuals with high combat power, and the physical ability of most people is also very weak. But they have a very complete industrial system, a large amount of firearm equipment for a large population, forming military power on a scale far exceeding ours. According to the intelligence from Cypher Paul's exploration, just this Japanese island country where we are currently located has a population of around 70 million, army military strength of over 1 million, 26 main ironclad ships, and Marines military strength of around 40,000, as well as an air force. The army of this Japanese nation is divided into Class A, Class B, Class C, and Class D. Among these, it is necessary to note the 18 Class A divisions, each with a military strength of roughly 20 to 30,000. It took a full hour before Crocodile finished introducing the situation of Japan's army, with emphasis on the army's cannon, the Marines' warships, and the Air Force's airplanes. Sounds like they are useless except for having many people. Bullet sneered. You could say that. Crocodile didn't deny this point either, because the fact was as stated, but he reminded everyone present. But they have very many people. Our opponent is not just one Japanese island country, but the entire world. Cypher Paul estimates the total military strength of this world exceeds 10 million and can even reach tens of millions. Sengoku, however, shake head. It's not that exaggerated. You ignored morale. Once they suffer one or two waves of major casualties and cannot see the possibility of victory, subsequent people will not come to their deaths. Speaking of this, the fleet admiral scanned the colleagues of pirate origin across the table and warned in a deep voice. I hope everyone can always remember that our mission is to severely damage the military and government of various countries, and not the civilians. For him, as long as the world government had no order requirements, he would try his best not to harm the innocent. Of course, if there was a clear order from above, just like the Buster Call, he would also execute it cold-bloodedly. This was his justice. Mama, I only want to eat the dessert of this world. If they cooperate obediently, Mama will be very kind. Charlotte Linlin excitement extended her tongue and licked her lips, her mouth overflowing with a large amount of saliva. Gorrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr not affecting civilians. Edward Newgate laughed heartily and heroically. After Jozu and Marco heard old man's words, they also lightly nodded. Just besides them, Burndeye World, Kaido, King, and others said nothing, while Shiryu even bit his cigar and sneered repeatedly. This made Sengoku and Aokiji sitting opposite frown, but they didn't say much either. Then, according to the plan, we will first control Japan, and then suppress other strong countries. Now I will assign everyone's mission objectives. Crocodile didn't quite agree with Sengoku's words either, thinking he was too naive. Since it was war, there was no such thing as innocent or not innocent, because war was not just participated in by officials and soldiers, but the entire country was participating. Not to mention anything else, don't weapons and grain all have to be manufactured and grown by civilians? If they win, all citizens enjoy the war dividend. If they lose, everyone suffers. Under a toppled nest, how can there be intact eggs? The Army class of 1st Division near the capital of Japan is the responsibility of Admiral Edward Newgate. Requirement: complete annihilation. Newgate felt a bit awkward hearing the two words Admiral attached after his name, but also knew he must get used to this title, so he nodded and agreed. The Marines' Yokosuka Navy Base is the responsibility of Vice Admiral Aokiji. Requirement: try to capture personnel, do not destroy infrastructure and warships. Kyuzen heard this order and felt a sense of relief in his heart. Truly letting himself go annihilate a group of weaklings felt a bit difficult to do. This also made him look at Crocodile in surprise. He didn't expect this guy of pirate origin would also have a merciful side. No need to be surprised. To completely preserve those ironclad ships, your ability is most suitable. We also need some people who are familiarized with them to teach our Marines how to control and manufacture those warships, and those facilities definitely have complete shipbuilding equipment, which must be protected well. Crocodile grinned and smiled, which made Sengoku, Garp, Okainu, and others look highly upon him. Admiral Kizaru and Vice Admiral Marco, you need to go to the northernmost Hokkaido and annihilate the 2nd, 5th, 7th, and 11th divisions there. Admiral Kaido and Vice Admiral King, you also need to go to the southernmost Kyushu Island and annihilate the 4th and 8th divisions there, as well as the 14th Division on Shikoku Island and the 13th Division on the adjacent Honshu Island. Then occupy the Sasebo Navy Base there and wait for the army troops to arrive. Afterwards, Crocodile added. Because the distance between these two ends is too far, and our plan is to suppress Japan at the fastest speed, there will be no army troops following you. This meant they needed to face tens of thousands of division troops alone, considered undertaking the most arduous mission. Any problems? Chapter 358, Troops deploy from Mount Fuji. Well arranged. Kaido was very satisfied, looking at Crocodile with undisguised appreciation. It was just a pity that he wasn't an animal system. One person dealing with 2 divisions? According to you, that's at least 40,000 troops. Sounds really scary. Borsellino, however, twisted his mouth and put on a look of deep emotion, as if the mission was truly troublesome for him. This also left the people around speechless. Kizaru, be serious. You are an admiral now. Sengoku reminded him helplessly. But I'm being serious, you know. Borsellino looked at the other party doubtfully. Fighting nearly 40,000 regular troops equipped with guns and cannons by himself didn't seem easy no matter how he looked at it. Putting everything else aside, just the travel time and the time spent fighting, he would probably have to break a sweat. He would also need to wash up and change clothing, which was actually quite tiring. PFFT. Ha 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 ha, you're still the same. Garp was amused by Borsellino's unreliable manner. Then, picking his nose, he looked at Crocodile. Crocodile Kid, quickly tell this old man where I need to go. Iron Fist Admiral Garp, you need to lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 10th Division not far from here, and then occupy the surrounding major cities. Garp slapped the table with a bang and grinned. No problem. Although he wouldn't attack civilians, he wouldn't show mercy to enemy soldiers, unless his own grandson was among them. Then let's continue. Crocodile looked at the document in his hand, on which notes had already been made in advance. Admiral Charlotte Linlin, you will lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 12th Division. No need. Charlotte Linlin waved her hand with a look of disdain. Mama can go alone. Just thinking about bringing along 10,000 burdens was troublesome enough to kill someone, and with so many people, they were bound to be slow. Crocodile could only agree to this. He really didn't think he could persuade the other party, and the other party didn't seem like a woman who would listen to reason, so he didn't waste any more words. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, please lead 10,000 army units to station in the Geopenji capital, occupy the Imperial Palace, National Diet Building, Metropolitan Police Department, and other government agencies, and control city order. Alright. Sengoku didn't mind being commanded by a vice admiral at all. Bullet, you will lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 3rd Division, and then occupy the surrounding major cities. Humphrey. Bullet saw Crocodile show a smug expression towards him and snorted coldly in displeasure. The latter, however, chuckled lightly and continued to assign everyone's missions. Admiral Akanyu, you will lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 6th Division, and then occupy the surrounding major cities. Understood. Sakazuki had no objection and agreed expressionlessly. Admiral Moxie will personally lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 9th Division, and then occupy the adjacent Tominato Naval Base. You already know the relevant requirements. Verndai World quickly found the locations of these two places on the map, but found that they were right next to Hokkaido, located in the northernmost part of Honshu Island. This made him frown. If he went alone, it would definitely be fast, but bringing a large force would require taking it one step at a time. Sand Crocodile, what do you think about this? We will arrive at the bases of these divisions and those naval ports first, and then the army units will follow up to occupy them. Verndai World laughed. Didn't you say you wanted to suppress this country as quickly as possible? I think this way the efficiency will be higher, right? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present's eyes lit up. No one wanted to spend several days, or even more than 10 days, slowly traveling with a large force. Crocodile considered for a few seconds, thought this method was indeed good, so he grinned and teased. If you are confident you can annihilate a division of 20 to 30,000 people alone, then that's fine too. But if something unexpected happens and you get killed by the enemy, don't blame me. Not to mention dying in battle, I really want to see who among the people present will come back with injuries all over. Verndai World's playful gaze swept around the meeting table. Wuro, if there really is such a piece of trash, then they should just be kicked back to the homeland, to avoid embarrassing our world in the other world. Kaido burst into exaggerated laughter. Cough cough. Seeing that the atmosphere of the meeting was a bit chaotic, Crocodile continued to announce the mission contents for the others. Vice Admiral Shiryu, lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 15th Division, and then occupy the surrounding major cities. Shiryu's expression became twisted, and a bloodthirst smile appeared on his face. He had been waiting for this order for a long time, and it was quite hard to keep holding back. Vice Admiral Onigamo, lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 16th Division, and then occupy the surrounding major cities. Vice Admiral Levin, lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 17th Division, and then occupy the surrounding major cities. Vice Admiral Jazu, lead 10,000 army units to annihilate the 18th Division, and then occupy the surrounding major cities. Vice Admiral Doberman, lead 10,000 army units to occupy the Maizuru base of the Marines. Vice Admiral Stainless, Vice Admiral Cracker, you will lead 10,000 army units to occupy Osaka. Vice Admiral Dalmatian, Vice Admiral Lista, you will also lead 10,000 army units to occupy the Cure base of the Marines. After hearing this, Borsellino looked doubtfully at Crocodile and asked, what about you? I am responsible for guarding this place. Crocodile finally finished the main business. He couldn't resist the urge for a smoke, took a cigar out from his pocket, and lit it for himself. But just as he bit down on the cigar, he heard Borsellino complain. "This is too easy for you, isn't it? I remember you can fly too." "No choice, I'm the commanding officer." After saying that, Crocodile tilted his head back and let out the classic gasping laugh. Ha. 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 He was completely satisfied today. Whitebeard, Garp, Sengoku, Big Mom, Ward, and also Kaido, Bullet, Okainu, Kizaru, Okiji. All these people were under his command. This definitely counts as a milestone achievement, right? It would be even better if I could take a picture of this scene. 30 minutes later, large flocks of birds were stirred up in the vast Okigahara forest. They were like flowing dark clouds, spreading everywhere beneath Mount Fuji. Thump, 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 beneath the sea of trees, among the trees, 100,000 army units wearing black military uniforms, holding automatic rifles, and carrying a katana with a black scabbard on their backs, surged forth thunderously under the command of a group of army officers. They were like black river water beginning to diverge, centered around the Stargate camp, rapidly advancing in all directions. The tens of thousands of black combat boots constantly stepped on the ground. Instantly, the ground rumbled, smoke and dust billowed, trees swayed, like a torrent, even more like thunder. In an instant, troops deployed from Mount Fuji. This earth-shattering spectacular sight was silently watched by the Cypher Paul members hidden in every corner. Although their expressions were indifferent, their gazes revealed a burning radiance. It has begun. At the same time, within the Stargate camp, first a dazzling golden flash and an azure yellow flame divine bird shot out and went north. Immediately after, a blue-scaled mythical azure dragon, carrying a flame-burning ancient pterodactyl, went south. This wasn't over yet. The rolling black smoke lava meteor shot up into the sky. The goddess stepping on thunderclouds, circling the sun flew towards high altitude in a burst of wild laughter. And there were streaks of afterimages almost invisible to the naked eye, accompanied by deafening sonic boom airwaves, scattering from above the sea of trees. Chapter 359, Report. The enemy has only one person. Seated on the empty throne of the Ark above the White Sea, stared at the dozens of virtual screens projected into the air with his golden ripple eyes. Below the platform, Stussy, Tesoro, Enel, and the Kuja guards standing on either side were also watching silently. Even the giant god soldiers outside had a screen in front of them. Clearly, the matters concerning the Stargate and the other world were no longer a secret on Noah's Arkansas after all. Under Im's instruction, there were personnel specifically responsible for explaining and clarifying them. As for how shocked they were when they first learned, it was already an old topic, and saying more would be pointless. Meanwhile, there were also the 5 elders in the room of authority. The deans of the 5 great branches at the World Government Headquarters and a host of ministerial and bureau chief-level officials. Kong the Iron Fist from the Command Department, Saru from the Staff Department, Zephyr from the Military and Political Department, and the Rear Admirals and Vice Admirals from the Army Headquarters and Marine Headquarters who were not participating in the war. Clearly, this first large-scale war of conquest launched against an other world received significant attention from all the higher-ups and middle-level officials of the world government. It was just a pity that not everyone in the world could watch together, as it was a monumental event. Demon Slayer World. Fuji Yoshida City, the closest city to Mount Fuji, was also the first city to be hit by the super sandstorm. More than a month had passed. Although a sad aura could still be smelled in the air, humans' attention had shifted to post-disaster reconstruction. Large areas of devastated ruins and yellow sand everywhere were waiting for them to clean up, rebuild beautiful houses one after another, and face new lives with smiles. These citizens, who had lived in this disaster-prone island nation for thousands of years, quickly adapted to this painful plight. Looking around, young and strong men wearing simple kimonos were either moving wood, holding tools to build houses, or pushing carts to transport yellow sand, while the women were responsible for delivering water and food or helping out on the side. Carefree children played in groups all over the streets, their faces showing smiles as if they didn't know that a natural disaster had just struck here. But their lively appearance made the busy adults also reveal smiles, and from time to time, the voices of the patrolling police officers could be heard loudly reminding the children to be careful. Everything seemed full of hope, and everyone was living strongly. However, when a dazzling flash cut a long golden beam in front of Mount Fuji, the gaze of many human in the city was attracted with horror. There was nothing they could do. This city could be considered the best place in all of Japan to admire Mount Fuji. Basically, no matter which street you stood on, you could see it at a glance. Although it was daytime, the golden light that swept across the sky in a straight line was too dazzling. But before any human could scream, A large bird burning with greenish-yellow flames followed the meteor-like beam towards the northern sky. A foe. Phoenix. As expected, screams appeared without surprise. The entire Fuji-Yoshida city exploded into chaos. The work in their hands was long forgotten, and the playing children also stood dumbfounded with their mouths open. It's covered in fire, feels more like a phoenix. A middle-aged human who was more familiar with mythological stories muttered to himself while staring intently at the streak of green that was rapidly disappearing into the sky. But just as all human began to discuss, a blue divine dragon suddenly shot out, soaring up accompanied by a flame pterodactyl, then circling above Mount Fuji before flying south. Azure Dragon. Completely dumbfounded, the men, women, old and young of the entire city began to doubt if they were dreaming. Or was it that the myth was about to revive? Were Takamagahara and the gods about to descend upon the human world again? This wasn't the end. When the rolling black smoke and magma, emitting an aura that felt hot just by looking at it, rushed into the clouds seemingly slowly but actually quickly. Human were already kneeling all over the streets and alleys. Asama deity has descended. Could Mount Fuji be about to erupt? It turned out they had mistaken Sakazuki for the symbolic deity after Mount Fuji's deification, and the continuous, deafening roar that followed was thought to be a sign that the volcano was about to erupt. This caused the atmosphere to turn to fear at an extremely fast speed. Some human had already started running frantically towards outside the city with their families. After all, if Mount Fuji really erupted, it would be no joke. Chaos, great chaos. The entire Fuji-Yoshida city completely fell into chaos. No matter how the police officers, who still had professional integrity, tried to maintain order, it was useless. At this moment, one black army after another, each with a scale of 10,000 fully armed troops, emerged from the edge of the Aokigahara forest. But at this time, no human noticed them at all. It wasn't until the citizens who hadn't had time to escape discovered that the Asama deity had left and the thunderous noises had gradually disappeared that human dared to run to a high slope to look towards Mount Fuji. At this point, the Black River, metaphor, continuously pouring out of the sea of trees finally came into the eyes of many human. What? What is that? For some reason, seeing this screen feed, a feeling of fear involuntarily arose in these humans' hearts, and their pupils subconsciously trembled and contracted. Tokyo sighed. The Japanese Empire Army General Staff Headquarters received reports from lower levels about half a day later, stating that at least tens of thousands of unidentified black-clad army had suddenly appeared near Mount Fuji, and Fuji-Yoshida city had been occupied. Tens of thousands of troops equipped with firearms, silently hidden in Aokigahara. How could this be? The current Chief of General Staff, Hasegawa, an admiral with a military rank of 53, stared intently at Mount Fuji on the map with his rather aged but extremely serious face. It can't be an outside army, but which influence within the country could possibly do this? But he also knew that now was not the time to investigate. He immediately turned to the adjutant beside him and ordered. No matter what, Kofu City will definitely be the first to bear the brunt. Immediately order the 1st Division and the 12th Division to defend Tokyo, and have the 49th Infantry Regiment stationed in Kofu City set up defenses. They must hold out until the 10th Division's support arrives. Yes, sir. However, this Chief of General Staff actually didn't know if they would make it in time, because he had never imagined a situation where the enemy would appear in the center like this. Yamanashi Prefecture, where Mount Fuji is located, and Tokyo are basically adjacent. There are no trucks to transport military strength now, and mobility mainly relies on cavalry. Soon. This matter was known to the Japanese Emperor and the cabinet members. Every human's first reaction was to exclaim that it was impossible. But when the black and white photos taken by some human appeared before their eyes, they immediately fell silent. Not only that, according to the last news reported from Fuji-Yoshida City, although it wasn't photographed, it is said that all the human in the city saw the Phoenix, Azure Dragon, and Asama deity appear from the Aokigahara forest. As soon as these words came out, 3 large golden question marks appeared above the heads of every Japanese higher-up. Yamanashi Prefecture, capital city, Kofu City. Woo-wah-woo. At this moment, this extremely prosperous large city had pulled the sharp alarm that echoed throughout the city. In the suburbs outside the city, the 49th Infantry Regiment, directly under the 1st Division, also began to set up defensive positions. Trenches dug in emergency by engineers were everywhere, along with the neighing of horses. More than 3,500 Japanese soldiers holding bolt-action rifles nervously lay in the pits observing the front. Further back, the artillery regiment's 12 Type 41 mountain guns and 36 Type 38 field guns were ready, and the cavalry regiment was waiting nearby to charge. Actually, with the pride of their 1st Division, they should have taken the initiative to engage, but the intelligence said the enemy force was nearly 10,000, so it was better to be cautious. About 2 hours later, A crisp gunshot was heard from a distance, followed by a few more gunshots. Some veterans knew that it was most likely the sentries who had been taken out. Suddenly, the soldiers in these trenches saw 9 tall figures wearing black coats and holding katanas, charging over openly, spaced dozens of meters apart. Their sprinting speed was very fast, and behind these human, a black line gradually appeared. Shoot them. Although they didn't understand why those 9 human were so foolish to launch a suicidal charge, they couldn't just let them come. Some Japanese soldiers who felt their spearmanship was accurate even took this as an opportunity to gain military merit, squinting their eyes and aiming their muzzles. Bang! 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 Immediately, each target was hit by several bullets, but the 9 human didn't even dodge, still maintaining their speed as they ran. Seconds later, not a single human was injured. Idiot! The regiment commander was furious when he saw this scene, thinking that all the soldiers under him had missed. He cursed them as useless, saying that all the bullets used for practice were wasted. Volley! Volley! With his angry roar, the soldiers in the pits pulled their triggers one after another. Immediately, a dense bullet rain poured out. There was no space to dodge at all, because 400 or 500 meters ahead was an unobstructed plain. But just as all the Japanese soldiers were mockingly waiting for the 9 human who seemed to be traditional samurai to fall with wails, they saw an unbelievable screen feed. They saw those humans swing the katanas in their hands, creating afterimages, bringing up sparks with clanging sounds, but their movements on their feet did not slow down at all. Could they be blocking the bullets with their blades? The regiment commander looked at the adjutant beside him in surprise. The adjutant, whose eyes were already widened to their limit, replied with a face full of shock. It seems so, yes. Let alone them, there were continuous exclamations of surprise in the trenches. The soldiers simply couldn't believe their eyes. No way, are those samurai legends all true? Are samurai really that strong? Impossible. If they're that strong, what do we need guns for? Couldn't we just learn swordsmanship? But no matter what their feelings were, the 9 figures wearing black coats and holding katanas had already approached within 100 meters. This distance was enough to clearly see their appearance. Wow! They're so tall, giants? To these Japanese soldiers with an average height of 1.6 meters, the 2-meter height of those 9 army majors was simply like the giant tribe from mythological stories. Even Westerners weren't that tall. No, that's not right. Why is their speed so fast? 400 or 500 meters, it's only been a little over 10 seconds. The regiment commander keenly noticed these humans' superhuman speed. His heart immediately panicked, and he quickly roared. Shooting! 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 3 loud shouts startled the entire regiment. For a moment, gunshots roared, and countless bullets cut through the void, leaving afterimages, pushing forward like a dense wall. The Japanese soldiers were completely terrified. All human were frantically firing bullets. However, this type of gun not only required manual bolt action after each shot, preventing continuous firing, but also could only load 5 bullets at a time. Therefore, the firepower wasn't actually that strong. But some human actually pulled the fuse of their hand grenades and threw them out. Roar! 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 Although they were stick grenades, the power of the explosion was decent. Balls of gunfire flash and gun smoke exploded in the court, but the actual effect was unsatisfactory. The 9 figures still showed no intention of dodging. They charged forward head-on, using sword-slashing bullets. Even when affected by hand grenades at close range, it had no impact. Not even the black coats on their bodies were damaged. Instead, they fluttered up and down with a blast wave, adding a bit more aura. Puff! In an instant, the 1st Army Lieutenant Colonel rushed into the trench. The katana in his hand stirred up a bloody storm, and every time the blade light flashed, it would send the painful human heads of Japanese soldiers flying. Immediately followed by the 2nd Army Major, the 3rd Army Lieutenant Colonel. Every single human was like a cold-blooded machine, metaphor, carrying out a bloody slaughter in their respective zones. No matter how many bullets, no matter how many bayonets, they were meaningless in front of them. Charging straight through, their powerful and unstoppable combat power swept across, truly unstoppable. These human who were army officers, field grade, were even too lazy to use 6 powers. A long saber was swung frantically, harvesting lives wherever there were many human. But this also limited their killing efficiency. More than 3,500 human was not a small number. However, the black torrent, metaphor, from the rear roared in. Da-da-da-da-da-da, the unique high-frequency gunshot sound of the automatic rifle, which crushed this era, could no longer be described with words like heavy rain, but rather with wind, the roar of a hurricane. A storm of metal, completely overwhelming, submerged the 49th Infantry Regiment's defense line. The soldiers of the 1st Division's 49th Infantry Regiment were visibly being killed and collapsing. They had no time to operate the bolt-action rifles in their hands, which were like useless burning sticks. Fire the cannons! Fire the cannons! Have the cavalry raid their flank! The regiment commander in the rear roared hysterically. His order was relayed quickly, and moments later, the familiar artillery fire sound rang out from further back. Immediately followed by a sharp whistling sound passing overhead, that was the sound of cannonballs flying. Noticing this scene, the 9 army officers, field grade, although they had no communication with each other, leaped into the air with great rapport, turning into after images. The next second, flashes of cannonball explosion appeared midair. The huge sound made the regiment commander and other human below bend over in pain, covering their ears. But compared to their abused ears, they were even more unable to believe what their eyes saw. What kind of joke is this? It turned out that those lieutenant colonels and majors had performed a show of skywalk and sword-slashing artillery shells for these Japanese people, and then directly charged towards the artillery position in the distance, giving them no chance to fire a second round of bombardment at all. After all, although the soldiers of the Sea Star world were much stronger in physique than the human of this world, if they were hit by a cannonball, they would still be injured, and possibly even die. 30 minutes later. Tokyo side, the noisy and busy Army General Staff Headquarters. Report. Kofu City has fallen, the 49th Infantry Regiment has been annihilated. Chief of General Staff Hasegawa's expression turned ugly. He didn't expect an entire elite regiment to be wiped out so quickly. Just as he was about to open his mouth to issue an order, another extremely panicked report sounded. Report. The 1st Division requests support. Their base has been attacked. Chief of Staff Hasegawa was greatly alarmed. He suddenly stood up, supporting himself on the meeting table with both hands, and asked loudly. How is this possible? They are in Tokyo. From Mount Fuji to Tokyo, although it looks close on the map, it would take quite a few days to walk there on foot. Could it be that the troops were ambushed in Tokyo in advance? How large is the enemy force? Report, Division Commander Kaigoshi said the enemy force is only 1 human. But it's a blonde giant holding a long-handled greatsword who descended from the sky. Huh? Chapter 360, Whitebeard's Welcome Gift. The Foot Basin Chicken 1st Class Division, also known as the Tokyo Division, is the most elite unit in the army, responsible for guarding the capital Tokyo. Furthermore, all officers and soldiers in this division are from the areas near Tokyo. Therefore, its troop quality is the highest, and it receives the most resource allocation, basically getting priority distribution of the best weapons. Its military strength even reaches 22,000, exceeding the full complement. However, in order to protect the capital, it has stationed the 49th Infantry Regiment and the 57th Infantry Regiment separately in Kofu, Yamanashi Prefecture, and Sakura, Chiba Prefecture. Thus, only the 1st Infantry Regiment and the 3rd Infantry Regiment are stationed at the division headquarters. Even so, there are 15,000 combat troops, plus various auxiliary troops, bringing the total to nearly 20,000 people within the vast military camp. Looking down from above, block-shaped buildings stand side by side like teeth on a comb. Those are the dormitories, warehouses, armory, cafeteria, stable, artillery battery, and even an internal hospital. All these facilities are enclosed by the outermost towering wall, and the streets are filled with soldiers carrying guns, patrolling in columns. Although they haven't entered combat readiness, their vigilance is strict, living up to their name as elite. Inside the headquarters building in the center of the camp, Division Commander Kaigoshi Yasutsuna, who holds the Vice Admiral rank, looked solemnly at the map hanging on the board. Beside his ears were the dripping telegraph sound and the noisy voices of signal soldiers making calls, making the atmosphere exceptionally nervous and serious. How can there be tens of thousands of troops hidden in the Aokigahara forest? At this moment, a staff officer standing behind him sighed. Lord Division Commander, if that's the case, Tokyo will have to rely solely on us and the 12th Division for at least half a month. Understood. Go relay the order. Prepare to depart immediately. We must set up defenses outside Setagaya Ward and absolutely prevent them from entering the capital. Kaigoshi Yasutsuna felt that no matter who the opponent was, blocking them first was definitely the right decision. Yes, sir. The chief of staff quickly walked out of the building. Whoosh, assembly. Assembly. A minute later, numerous whistle signals continuously sounded throughout the camp, followed by the loud urging of captains. Large numbers of Foot Basin Chicken soldiers rushed out of the dormitory buildings, gathering towards the training ground, open ground not far away, where they were to form ranks for assembly. At the same time, boxes of hand grenades were carried out, Maxim heavy machine guns were lifted out by teams of 2, and field guns were also pulled out of the barracks, then horses were brought over to prepare for transport. In the blink of an eye, The originally quiet division military camp was filled with the sounds of people shouting and horses neighing. Everyone knew that a battle was about to happen. Whoosh! Suddenly, just as the first batch of soldiers reached the edge of the training ground, a very distinct and sharp whistling sound first came from the clear sky. Bombardment? The expressions of some experienced veterans changed drastically. This whistling sound was exactly the same as the sound of cannonballs flying through the air. Lie down. But just as they shouted, an explosion suddenly occurred in the center of the training ground, kicking up rolling thick smoke. Countless stone fragments splashed out like bullets, instantly knocking down some unlucky individuals. Immediately, miserable screams erupted. However, no one on the scene could pay attention to them. After all, if it was a bombardment, it wouldn't be just one shot. Everyone desperately began searching for cover nearby. A few seconds later, they found that there was no movement overhead, as if only that one shot had truly been fired. This made the foot basin chicken soldiers look at each other in confusion. Amidst this comical and awkward scene, a peculiar yet incredibly bold and unrestrained laughter rang out. This laughter was like a gale roaring, and like thunder rumbling. The sound wave was so immense that it made eardrums ache, sweeping through the vast military camp. Gorara la la. Edward Newgate lightly waved his left hand, instantly stirring up a surging strong wind, sweeping away the smoke and dust that enveloped him, completely exposing his body under the blue sky and white clouds. Immediately, a blond giant nearly 7 meters tall, the height of 2 stories, stood with his back to the brilliant sunlight, towering in the horrified gazes of everyone. No way. Kaigoshi Yasutsuna held his binoculars, trembling as he looked at the terrifying figure in the lens. Was he living in a dream? Why would such an unbelievable existence appear before him? Compared to this Lord Vice Admiral, the soldiers around the training ground were truly dumbfounded, frozen like wooden chickens. Some were even paralyzed with fear on the ground. Silence, a deathly silence. No one knew what they should do now. Should they attack? Or should they step forward and greet the other party? But could this giant speak Japanese? Maybe start with hello, nice to meet you. And then the other party would reply. Fine, thank you, and you? Edward Newgate saw that these short yellow-clothed figures were just staring at him foolishly, with no intention of initiating an attack, which felt a bit awkward to him as well. But he had been flying all night using the moonwalk he had only recently learned, so he couldn't do nothing. After thinking for a moment, he decided to attack first to break this somewhat awkward situation. Immediately, he clenched his empty fist, his biceps and triceps swelling as if inflated. At the same time, a faint white light appeared on his fist. Is this not good? A captain saw Whitebeard's movement and the white light, and felt a chill surge through his heart. The strong sense of crisis made his legs tremble. Here's a welcome gift for you all. Take it. With a low roar from Edward Newgate, his left fist, carrying compressed quake power, slammed into the air to his left. Buzz, in an instant, the white light exploded violently, turning into fine cracks that spread in all directions, as if the space itself had been shattered into broken ice. Boom, a shockwave like a volcanic eruption surged out like a tidal wave, shaking and sending the ground, human bodies, and buildings within the range flying. Surging smoke and dust shot into the sky. Large numbers of soldiers turned into blood mist and shattered bones amidst desperate screams. The originally sturdy houses were torn apart, becoming a pile of ruins. It went through. If viewed from above, one could see that Whitebeard's single strike had blasted a line through the military camp starting from the training ground, and even a part of the outermost wall had collapsed. Monster. He's a monster. Shooting. Bring up the field guns. The officers and soldiers of the 1st Division, the Foot Basin Chickens, finally realized that this giant was not friendly. They didn't need any order from above to open fire and immediately launched a frantic attack driven by fear. Large numbers of bolt-action rifles opened fire one after another. Machine gunners even aimed the Maxim heavy machine guns at him. In an instant, the firepower of nearly 600 bullets per minute was displayed to its fullest. Bright gunfire flashes bloomed at the muzzles, and bullets rained down like a downpour. Goraralala, now this is more like it. It's boring when you just stand there. Edward Newgate, facing such a fierce bullet storm, was not surprised but instead elated. He didn't dodge but swung the Murakamagi-ri in his right hand. This supreme-grade sharp sword originally had its sword hilt cut off by him. Later, after agreeing to the world government's demand to disband his pirate crew, establish the Whitebeard Kingdom, and accept the command department's jurisdiction, it was completely repaired through the efforts of numerous swordsmiths on Wanu Island. Airquake, Cloud Cutter. Amidst his wild laughter, a large Naginata wrapped in white light swept out. Chapter 361, The Ravaged Foot Basin Chickens. Bullets filling the sky turned into a storm of metal shooting from all directions, pouring down upon Edward Newgate, who stood tall in the center of the training ground. However, as the white light on Murakamagi re-bloomed and the tremor erupted, the surrounding air cracked with fissures. The countless dense bullets were instantly frozen in the air for several seconds, then shattered one after another, turning into a pile of finer copper sand that rolled back with a powerful shock wave. This time, it wasn't just a single line that was pierced through, but a massive fan shape that completely overturned the 1st Division's military camp. Everyone within the range was instantly reduced to primal flesh and blood, buried beneath mud blocks and collapsed houses. Fragile. It was truly too fragile. This was Edward Newgate's first impression of this scene. If they were people from the Sea Star world, even if they were shaken to death, their corpses wouldn't be so utterly mangled. Boom. 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 Just then, several cannon fire sounds, distinctly different from the homeland's cannons, rang out from behind him. Immediately after wave of gunfire flash continuously exploded behind him, and rolling thick smoke instantly engulfed his massive body. Fire. Fire. Keep firing. Kaigoshi Yasutsuna's eyes were bloodshot as he gritted his teeth and roared repeatedly in anger, looking terrifying as if he wanted to vent his anger through each cannonball. The 2 attacks from Whitebeard just now, which weren't even at full power, had completely crippled his division and the entire camp. Unforgivable. He was already consumed by anger and killing intent. Boom 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 boom, 12 Type 41 mountain guns and 36 Type 38 field guns bombarded their own training ground open ground with cannonballs. Cannon fire roared, large amounts of gunsmoke filled the air, and the deafening roaring of bombardment was incessant. These cannonballs were imbued with the fear of all the artillery soldiers. Die. Die, you monster. But the monster seemed to have heard their thoughts. A familiar loud laughter suddenly rang out, even turning into hurricane-like sound waves that suppressed all the roaring, making it crystal clear to everyone. But the problem was, the cannon fire was still ongoing. Gorahaha. Is this your strongest offensive? If so, then this old man will get serious too. For Whitebeard, who was still in his prime, the emission of armament hockey was enough to block all these attacks. However, he also noticed that the speed of these cannonballs was much faster than those from the homeland, and their shape was also strange, not spherical, but conical, carrying an impact force. Yet, their power during explosion was roughly the same. Boom, suddenly, an incredibly fierce aura transformed into a visible dark red force field, erupting violently from the rolling gun smoke and cannon fire. They pushed the air, turning it into thick air currents, brutally sweeping away everything in their path on the gunfire flash, like sea waves covering the sky and sun, sweeping across the entire division camp. Foot Basin chicken soldiers swept by the energy along the way instantly rolled their eyes back, collapsed to the ground, and upon closer inspection, were bleeding from their 7 orifices, completely devoid of any signs of life. Seconds later, the bombardment stopped, and the gunshots faded. The entire 1st Division, including Division Commander Kaigoshi Yasutsuna, who was hiding in the building, and the officers around him, all died silently. Their death state was identical to the soldier corpses scattered everywhere outside. Quiet, silent, not a sound could be heard. Edward Newgate, who was just preparing for a big fight, stopped his movements and scanned the entire scene with great surprise. He truly hadn't expected that just some conqueror's hockey that leaked out in his excitement would kill everyone and every horse in the entire military camp. This left him feeling somewhat stifled. There was nothing he could do. For people from the Sea Star world, conqueror's hockey might at most cause them to faint. But for these physically weak people from the Demon Slayer world, it was a super weapon capable of shaking their brains into paste. So weak. Meanwhile, the various divisions and navy bases across the Geopenji nation also began to suffer various unimaginable and terrifying attacks. The Yokosuka port base, the closest to the 1st Division base, was both a factory for manufacturing and repairing warships and a marine fleet base. Here were multiple cruisers like Tsukuba, Kurama, Hiei, Ibuki, Izumo, Tokaiwa, etc. There were also 4 battleships like Mikasa, Fuji, Asahi, Satsuma, plus over 20 destroyers and nearly 20,000 naval personnel. It could be said to be the pride of the Foot Basin Chicken Empire Navy and their headquarters. However, this military stronghold was currently filled with loud gunshots and battle cries. A cold aura permeated the air. Although it was still a hot summer, the port was frozen everywhere one looked. Factory buildings, and even the streets were covered with a thick layer of frost, and lifelike human-shaped ice sculptures stood on the ground. I told you, as long as you don't resist, I won't go too far. Don't make things difficult for me, military officer sirs. In the command building, Kyusen sighed with a helpless expression, scratching the back of his head. White cold air immediately puffed out from his mouth. In front of him was a group of high-ranking marine officers led by Joint Fleet Commander-in-Chief, Admiral Noyukata. They were pointing pistols at him with faces full of fear. What kind of monster are you? Admiral Noyakita asked through gritted teeth, his voice trembling violently. Through the window behind him, one could see that the numerous warships in the port, along with the seawater, had been completely frozen, even though the scorching sun in the sky was still emitting infinite light and heat. Monster? That's quite rude. I heard you're the admiral here. Then you should know a lot about those ironclad ships. I'll have to ask for your guidance then. After speaking, Kyuzen thought for a moment, feeling that he hadn't introduced himself yet, and said with a smile. Oh right, my name is Kyuzen. I'm a Marine Vice Admiral under the World Government. We're colleagues. World Government? On the other side, Sakazuki was not like Kyuzen, who spoke so much nonsense. As soon as he arrived outside the 6th Division base, without even a greeting, he directly raised his arms, which were flowing with magma and emitting black smoke reaching into the sky. Meteor volcano. Bang 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 bang, balls of fiery red magma shot up into the high altitude like anti-aircraft guns. When they reached their limit height, they began to pass through the cloud layer, like burning meteorites from outer space, constantly expanding and growing larger as they smashed towards the military camp, where sharp alarm sound had already been raised. But it was clearly too late. Kami-sama. You're kidding, right? This kind of matter. Inside the 6th Division's camp, from the division commander at the top to the low-level soldiers at the bottom, all the foot basin chicken people looked up at the balls of fire filling the sky above their heads in despair. At this moment, their guns, were completely meaningless. As for escape, anyone with eyes could see that there was simply no time to run outside the military camp. Oh, those who were already on the edge were indeed fleeing for their lives frantically. The next moment, house-sized magma blocks smashed into various corners of the military camp. The air was instantly scorched and boiled by the intense temperature. Large swaths of magma, like sea waves, swallowed everything around them. Tens of thousands of foot basin chicken soldiers screamed tragically in the magma. The surging sea of fire and thick smoke completely sealed off any signs of life within the camp. And those who were lucky enough to escape the military camp's main gate looked in terror at the lava giant that appeared before their eyes, a monster whose entire body flowed with magma and emitted a terrifying aura. Great eruption. Meanwhile, Borsellino, who had already arrived at the northernmost part of Hokkaido, above the 2nd Division military camp, also started with a special move with the mindset of finishing the mission as early as possible. Yasukani no Magatama. In the blink of an eye, the foot basin chickens below noticed that another brilliant sun had appeared in the sky. Immediately after, their pupils reflected streaks of golden light beam, scattering down like heavenly maidens scattering flowers. Chapter 362, Cypher Pollax again. Since the rumor of gunfire being heard in the suburbs of Edogawa appeared, the public atmosphere within the Tokyo metropolis became strange. Citizens discussed whether a war was about to break out. Although the telephone penetration rate was not very high in this era, as it was near the capital of Geopenji Nation, there were naturally many high officials and noblemen. So, not long after, astonishing news such as tens of thousands of unidentified black-clad army emerging from the Okigahara forest at the foot of Mount Fuji, major cities in Yamanashi Prefecture including Kofu being fallen, and the 1st Division's 49th Infantry Regiment being annihilated, quickly reached the various districts and cities near Tokyo via the long telephone lines. This news first caused the wealthy class to be panic-stricken, and then inevitably spread to the outside world, triggering wave after wave of exclamation and clamor. But it wasn't over yet. Next, almost every hour, new news would inexplicably leak out. Yokosuka Naval Base was captured. The 10th Division, annihilated. The attackers were not human army, but giants, dragons, monsters, deities. In any case, various unimaginable but vividly described rumors spread through the air like a virus. Uninformed people were half believing, half doubting. Informed people were already trembling with fear, wanting to take their family to hide, but also worried about the chaos of war outside and suffering misfortune. In short, amidst countless voices mixed with fantasy elements, the Tokyo metropolis was in chaos. Just at this moment, in central Tokyo, the Imperial Palace in Chiyoda Ward welcomed Prime Minister Kato, Foreign Minister Yoniya, Navy Minister Koyama, Army Minister Shibato, Chief of Naval General Staff Hirosaki, and 5 other cabinet ministers. They had received the Emperor's summons order. The Emperor of this era was not the Emperor after the surrender in the Second World War. He held the highest real power of Geopenji Nation, truly a leader in every sense. However, the current Emperor, being weak since childhood, didn't like to meddle much compared to the previous one. But now that such a critical situation had appeared domestically, he naturally had to step forward. After all, they were about to be attacked at their doorstep. Hasegawa-kun? As the 5 gathered in front of the main gate, preparing to enter the Imperial Palace via Nijibashi, Prime Minister Kato noticed that the Chief of Staff Hasegawa hadn't arrived, which made him look doubtfully at the Minister of the Army, Army Minister Shibato. I'm not very clear either. He should be arriving soon, or perhaps he was delayed by something. Army Minister Shibato was equally confused. At this moment, the large iron gate in front of them slowly opened under the pushing of the guards on both sides. A moment later, everyone saw the current emperor sitting on the throne inside the Meiji Imperial Palace. He was a short-legged man with not much flesh on his face, appearing relatively thin. This was because the Jiopenji imperial family had a so-called wife selection committee, which not only required the prince's wife to be beautiful and dignified and have imperial bloodline, but also stipulated that her height could not exceed the prince's shoulder, to show the nobility of the future emperor. As a result, every time two short people married, the offspring born naturally could not be tall. The worst part was that because this traditional rule had a long history, there was no possibility of intergenerational inheritance resulting in a tall person. His Majesty. The 5 ministers bowed in unison towards the emperor on the platform to greet him. Let's cut the small talk. Tell me, what is the current situation? What influence does the army in Yamanashi Prefecture belong to, and when can the surrounding divisions reach Tokyo? The Foot Basin Chicken Emperor, derogatory, asked in a deep voice. Very sorry, we still haven't investigated the origin of these troops. We only know that their equipment is extremely excellent, the firearms they use are never seen before, but their rate of fire is comparable to heavy machine guns. The rifles in the hands of our soldiers are completely unable to contend against them. Army Minister Shibato's tone was full of unimaginable, then he continued. Not only that, according to the intelligence received from the Army General Staff Headquarters, we have learned that the 12th Division, 6th Division, 10th Division, 3rd Division, 4th Division, as well as the Marines Yokosuka Base and Maizuru Base, have all suffered strange attacks, and without exception, they have all sent emergency reports requesting support. So Your Excellency means that besides the 1st Division, no other divisions will rush here to guard the capital? The Emperor's expression turned ashen, and he began to feel a sense of foreboding in his heart. His Majesty, we still have numerous Class B divisions, and here in Tokyo, we also have tens of thousands of police force. Issue them firearms, and they can be pulled onto the battlefield. Army Minister Shibato quickly comforted him, but at this moment, Prime Minister Kato suddenly pulled out a photo and said, His Majesty, this old minister asks you to take a look at this photo. This is a photo taken by an Asahi Shimbun reporter who was visiting disaster victims in Fuji Yoshida City. Under the Emperor's gaze, a waiter from the Imperial Household Agency walked forward, took the photo, and then handed it over to the former's hands. The moment the Emperor's sight moved to the photo, his eyes immediately widened, because on it was actually a long dragon soaring straight into the clouds with Mount Fuji as the background. Although the tone was black and white, it was still clear, coupled with this being a simple Araware photo was equivalent to ironclad proof. When the 4th Division on Kyushu Island requested support, they mentioned that the attackers were a blue azure dragon. Prime Minister Kato said faintly. Why? The Emperor believed it, but precisely because he believed it, he felt it was unimaginable. Looking at the azure dragon figure in the photo, he began to mutter to himself. Are the gods of Takamagahara about to unleash divine punishment, or has a group of demons appeared to bring chaos to the world? What should we do? Suddenly, he stand up, looked resolutely at the ministers, and said, Gentlemen, follow me to the shrine to worship the gods. Yes, His Majesty. The 5 cabinet ministers bowed in unison and agreed. If before, they were still half believing, half doubting the talk of demons and gods, or even treated it as legend, now they were certain that there truly are gods and Buddhas everywhere in the world. Since that is the case, then compared to relying on any army, it's better to pray to gods and Buddhas. 30 minutes ago. Just as the 5 ministers arrived at the Imperial Palace main gate. Within Chiyoda Ward, Minato Ward, and Chuo Ward, obvious disturbance and exclamation had already appeared. Especially on the major main streets, streaks of black figures, at extremely high speed, openly and brazenly rushed towards the various government agencies of Jiopenji Nation. They completely ignored the shocked shouts of passers-by on the street, either wall climbing and eaves running or skywalk, grandly displayed scene after scene of fantasy scenes. These people were the Cypher Pol members who originally carried out the exploration mission. Later, they infiltrated under the order of the Otherworld Strategy Committee. And their current target is the National Diet Building, the Military Headquarters Building, the Police Agency Headquarters, and even the location of the Imperial Palace. Swish. Swish. What are you? Pucci 2 soldiers guarding the military headquarters gate, as soon as they saw the black shadow rushing towards them at high speed, were greatly startled and were just about to take down the rifle from their backs when an after-image quickly swept past them, and a large blood hole appeared on their forehead. At the same time, More than a dozen Cypher Paul members wearing black suits rushed in from multiple directions. No, it should be said they killed their way into this building that represents the Footbasin Chicken Empire Army headquarters. Whether it was military officers encountered in the corridor along the way, or guards who ran over, even if it was just a cleaner sweeping, or a clerk holding documents, they were all easily killed by this group of cold-blooded agents who didn't even blink when killing. Gunshot, roar, finally all turned into scream and the muffled sound that rang out when they fell to the ground. What's the situation? In the office, Chief of Staff Hasegawa, who had just received the Emperor's summons order and was preparing to go to the Imperial Palace to attend, heard the commotion outside. His expression changed drastically. He subconsciously pulled out the pistol from his holster, then picked up the katana from the sword stand. Bang! The next moment, the door exploded. In the smoke and dust, a black shadow carrying the smell of blood that rushed towards him, slowly emerged. Chapter 363, The Appearance of Kurizumi Higurashi. It was evening. The beautiful fiery clouds dyed the sky a fiery red, but today's color leaned slightly towards an ominous, scarlet blood color. It was a bit scarlet. If someone in this era could look down on Tokyo from high altitude, they would clearly see a large green zone in the center of this city, a place where every inch of land is precious and buildings stand tall. This is the Imperial City area and Imperial Palace of the Geopenji Nation, the place they call the Imperial Palace. Its north side is called Katanomaru Park, the east side is called East Garden, and the south side is the Outer Garden. These three places are open to the public, meaning ordinary citizens can visit during normal times. But the west side is not, because that is the real Imperial Palace. Whether it's the Homeiden Hall where state banquets are held, the Chokuden Hall for receiving foreign guests, or the Inner Palace Tsundoden where the imperial family lives, they are all here. These palaces have green tiles and white walls, brown copper pillars, large areas of grass court and dense forest, plus the moat that surrounds the entire Imperial Palace, giving people a feeling of elegance and simplicity rather than solemnity. In addition, within the Imperial Palace, there are also two extremely important departments for the imperial family. One is the Imperial Household Agency, responsible for their daily life, and the other is the Imperial Palace Guard, responsible for their personal safety. This Imperial Palace Guard is actually jointly managed by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. This means it is essentially a group of police responsible for guard duty, with a total scale of 2,000 people. At this time, figures within different expressions, wearing black suits, and with sturdy body sizes, casting long black shadows under the glow of the sunset, arrived at the edge of the moat. Because the opening time had long passed. Kitahanbashi Gate to the north, Hanzaman Gate to the west, Hirakawa Gate to the east, and Otiman Gate and Kikaman Gate to the southeast sea were completely closed. And Sakashitaman Gate, Sakuradaman Gate, and the main gate to the south were even more heavily guarded, with armed police everywhere scanning the surroundings or patrolling back and forth. Without any surprise, the figures of the Cypher Paul members were quickly discovered by them and aroused vigilance. These people truly did not look like ordinary residents, they looked more like a group of gangsters preparing to impact the Imperial Palace. But where would gangsters get the courage to provoke the Imperial family? Immediately notify the Metropolitan Police Department and have them send people over. The Imperial Palace Patrol Minister responsible for the main gate was Shine Abe from Security Section 2. He first gave an order to an Imperial Palace patrol behind him, then shouted a warning towards the outside. This is the Imperial Palace main gate. Unrelated personnel are strictly forbidden from approaching. If you step onto Nijibashi Bridge, we will arrest you on the crime of trespassing on the Imperial Palace. But his righteous and stern shout had no effect whatsoever. Those men in black were still walking over brazenly. It's no use, looks like we have to act. Seeing this, Shine Abe shrugged with a light chuckle and said, "Alright, it's a rare opportunity. Without something like this, the sword Dao we've practiced for over a decade would have no place to be used. What do you say?" "Ha ha ha, Minister is right. Looking at them, they don't seem to be carrying any weapons. Let's subdue them with our scabbards later. I really don't know which family they belong to, but they're about to have terrible luck." The patrol police standing guard all echoed with laughter, while their right hands eagerly gripped their scabbards. Unlike the police outside, these Imperial Guard police are not equipped with guns, they only carry personal swords. This is considered a rule passed down from the Edo era. From that time onwards, the Geopenji Imperial family has always recruited various swordsmanship experts to serve as Imperial Guards, and now they are selected from the sword Dao experts within the Metropolitan Police Department. Anyway, the Metropolitan Police Department is not far from here, and this is the center of the capital, so carrying guns or not makes little difference. Minister. Oh, Nobumoto, how was the contact? About how many minutes until they arrive? Let me guess, is it 4 minutes? Shine Abe teased. No, It's not. No one is answering the phone at the Metropolitan Police Department. I called 3 times and couldn't get through, and I called 4 acquaintances as well and couldn't get through. At the same time. Meanwhile, the 4 Cypher Paul outside the iron door suddenly accelerated. Their sprinting legs instantly turned into afterimages, and in the blink of an eye, they swept across the Nijibashi. Thud. The next second, a huge impact sound rang out. The dozen or so Imperial Palace police watched in stunned silence as a protruding fistprint appeared on the thick iron door, followed by a second, and a third. The speed at which the fistprints appeared was very fast. Within just a few seconds, the large iron door was covered in fistprints. Boom, with the final strike, the iron door finally couldn't hold on, splitting into over a dozen pieces of bent iron that scattered outwards, sending 2 unlucky individuals flying in a blood mist. Shinabe was completely dumbfounded, frozen in place without even noticing the blood drops that splashed onto his face. Minister. It's an enemy attack. At this time, Patrol Nobumoto, who had gone to contact the Metropolitan Police Department earlier, loudly woke up his colleagues around him. At the same time, he quickly drew the katana from his waist, pointing the glinting blade tip forward. But Shinabe looked at the 4 black shadows walking through the broken doorway, instinctively swallowing. He wanted to say, the opponents are beings who can punch through an iron door. Good, Nobumoto-kun, your courage is commendable. Everyone, go. Take them down. However, his reaction was very fast. He immediately issued an order with anger, looking like he was about to fight the attackers desperately. Yes. Charge. This made the surrounding Imperial patrol's heads heat up. Holding their katanas, they charged forward with shouts, but immediately Shinabe's loud shout rang out from behind them again. Brothers, hold on. I'll go call for support. After speaking, Minister Shinabe turned and ran without hesitation. He firmly believed his eyesight. Those 4 people didn't have any large objects on them, so it was impossible for them to have blown up the iron door with some machine. What would be the result if fists that could leave fistprints on an iron door hit a human body? He didn't want to experience it. Suddenly, while running, Shinabe only felt a sharp whistling sound ring out by his ear. The next moment, a bright crescent moonlight blade instantly slashed across his waist. Its speed was so fast that he didn't feel any pain at first, only realizing he had been cut in 2 when his upper body slid down. Before falling into darkness, from the corner of his eye, he saw that his dozen or so subordinates had already fallen in a pool of blood, lifeless. Several broken blades were scattered on the ground. So fast. When? At this moment, other directions of the Imperial Palace also suffered forced entry by Cypher Paul. The alarm, which had never been pulled since its establishment, also began screaming desperately, like a woman being violated, crying out for help frantically. Hundreds and thousands of Imperial police, in groups, surged towards the 4 gates, slaughtering together with the men in black who rushed in. Every time iron body, finger pistol, paper arts, and tempest kick were used, they would take a large number of human lives. Especially tempest kick, which could basically cut all bodies in a line into bloody and mangled chunks of flesh and blood. The gushing scarlet hot blood, accompanied by dismembered limbs and bodies, splattered onto the sandy ground covered with pebbles. Inside the shrine, the emperor, who had just finished worshipping his ancestor Amaterasu Mikami, heard the wailing and screams outside and his expression changed drastically. The 5 cabinet ministers behind him were even more shocked and suspicious. What happened? Prime Minister Kato shouted towards outside the hall, but no one responded, which made the atmosphere become eerie and terrifying. He, I knew it, there must still be a place where I'm needed. It's just that it's in another world, which is quite unexpected. Only to see a white-haired old woman with a face as ferocious as an evil ghost, walking into the shrine with a cold sneer. Behind her were sounds of mournful screams. You! Who are you? How dare you? How dare you trespass into the vital area of the Imperial Palace? Army Minister Shibato and Navy Minister Koyama took 2 steps forward, blocking the Emperor, Prime Minister, and others behind them. No matter what, they were soldiers by origin. Although old, their courage remained. Hey, me? I'm called Kurizumi Higurashi. But soon, this place will belong to me, so you are the trespassers. After speaking, Kurizumi Higurashi walked over with her hands raised, smiling. But before you die, let me touch you. Chapter 364, Declaring War on the Whole World. Cypher Paul's assassination operation swiftly eliminated departments such as the National Congress Senate, the Army Military Department, and the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department, and secretly controlled the entire Imperial Palace and Imperial family. It could be said that the Geopenji nation was now a leaderless flock, its core directly taken out. At the same time, The 10,000 army troops personally led by Fleet Admiral Sengoku ignored the various towns along the way and struck directly at the heart, arriving at Setagaya Ward, the outermost zone of Tokyo, at 10:32 p.m. This was also the zone where the National Congress Senate was located. At this time, Tokyo was in a state of panic. The originally bustling and lively streets were now deserted, with only discarded newspapers fluttering in the wind. Occasionally, scattered gunshots would ring out from a distance, followed by fleeting screams. Those were likely the police who still wanted to resist, being hunted down and eliminated by Cypher Paul. They actually attempted to engage in street-fighting guerrilla warfare, relying on rifles in their hands and their familiarity with the environment. If their opponents were ordinary people, it might have some effect, but against a group of superhumans, it was truly meaningless. Grant, Biderman, Avane, Meg, each of you lead 2,500 men. According to the map, take over the 4 urban areas in the east, south, west, and north. While you're at it, clear them out and kill all the thugs who are taking advantage of the situation to plunder wealth, burn, kill, and loot. If you encounter anyone attacking you with a weapon, shoot them dead regardless of gender or age. Fleet Admiral Sengoku withdrew his deep gaze looking out at this other-world city, turned his head, and issued orders to the people behind him, his tone quite grim. Yes. The 4 army colonels immediately accepted the order and led their respective troops to rush away. Among them, Colonel Avane, who was quickly decided upon to be responsible for the southern urban area, immediately ordered his team to disperse into squads on the spot to control Setagaya Ward, Meguro Ward, Shinagawa Ward, and Ota Ward. A moment later, squads of army soldiers holding automatic rifles poured into the streets and alleys, observed by many citizens hiding indoors, only daring to observe from behind their windows. Every line of sight, every pair of gazes, was filled with nervousness, fear, and a hint of curiosity. It was simply that the attire and equipment of these army soldiers were too ultra-modern for this era. Coupled with the clear aura of fierceness and bravery exuded by each person, it subtly served as a form of intimidation. Meanwhile, Fleet Admiral Sengoku personally led the remaining 2,500 army troops to advance towards Chiyoda Ward, where the center was located, to take over the Imperial Palace's city defenses. Inside the Aokigahara Forest, centered around the Stargate camp, the army soldiers stationed here were continuously cutting down the towering trees under the guidance of the relevant personnel from the construction department. Previously, they were left for concealment, but now that was no longer necessary. Because the world government wanted to build a large, well-equipped base here, they needed to clear out a wide open ground. Actually, the job of cutting trees should have been the responsibility of the construction team from the construction department. However, considering efficiency, the construction department still negotiated with Crocodile. The latter did not make things difficult. After all, it was just cutting trees, which could be treated as training. At that time, Crocodile even proposed whether he should use his awakening once to turn the zone within a radius of 500 li into a desert. That way, the trees would also turn into deadwood and be buried under quicksand, and then this place would be all open ground. Unfortunately, Director Lucine of the construction department did not agree. Why turn perfectly good forest land into a desert? They just wanted to clear out a zone within the vast sea of trees to build a base and create 2 roads leading outside. Most of the ecosystem was still well maintained. After all, compared to a stretch of yellow sand, a lush green forest definitely looks more comfortable. Vice Admiral. Hearing the voice, Crocodile, who was scanning a map inside the command center, turned around and looked at Mima Amatori, with a smoking cigar in his mouth. Where is the news from this time? It's Fleet Admiral Sengoku. He said Tokyo is stable, and the Emperor and cabinet ministers have also been successfully brought under control. However, he mentioned that there are many legations from other countries in Chiyoda Ward and Chuo Ward, such as Han's Tiger Country, Whitehead Eagle Country, John Bull Country, etc., and asked how we should handle them. Mima Amatori's appearance was as handsome as ever. His pink long hair, paired with the black military uniform, exuded an aura capable of captivating most women. Crocodile raised an eyebrow. A look of confusion first flashed in his eyes, but he immediately understood and smiled. It seems Marshal Raymond hasn't revealed the overall strategy to the Marines yet. That's fine too. Tell Fleet Admiral Sengoku to convey our declaration of war notice to their countries through those ministers, then place them under house arrest. These people should be useful later. Declare war. Understood. Mima Amatori was actually also hearing for the first time that the world government was going to war with the entire world, so a look of surprise appeared on his face. But his reaction was quick. He quickly suppressed his emotions and was about to go out and get to work, but at this moment, Crocodile's voice came over again. Also, notify all combat powers at or above Vice Admiral. After completing their missions within Geopengi Nation, they can proceed on their own to the previously selected countries for suppression. Remind them once more that they must contact the command center every 5 days. Yes. Seeing that Crocodile had no further instructions, Mima Amatori immediately left quickly. The latter, holding a cigar between his fingers, looked at another map, a Demon Slayer world map, and a cold smile appeared on his face. After dealing with this world, I should also be promoted to Admiral Candidate. Bullet, it's still uncertain which of us will become an army general first. As for Army Marshal, ever since he knew that Sakazuki was specially transferred to the army by the higher-ups, he knew he didn't need to think about that position for himself. Not just him, not even the current Black Rhino Admiral, Verndai World, could. As for the reason, what else could it be? Isn't it because they have pirate origin? Inside the John Bull Legation in Chiyoda Ward, Tokyo, the original guards here had already been shot dead by the army, leaving behind only the civilian staff led by the minister and counselor. What? You want me to convey a declaration of war notice to my country? Minister Wendell looked at the black-clothed military officer before him, who was a head taller than himself and claimed to be an army major. He practically suspected his ears were malfunctioning. Why? If the goal of your military coup is to control Japan, then in the future, you can completely continue diplomatic relations with us. Why must there be conflict? This minister was very interested in the assault rifles in the army soldiers' hands and the pineapple grenades at their waists. After seeing that these people did not kill him, his mind became active, thinking of obtaining them through cooperation. But Major Bitter merely looked down at the other party coldly. Because we are the world government. Our declaration of war target is not just your John Bull country, but the entire world. You can spread this news as much as possible, because next, we will launch indiscriminate attacks on this world until you completely surrender and obey. After speaking, he immediately turned and left, leaving behind a group of stunned John Bull diplomats inside the legation. These people looked at each other, and a wave of inexplicable laughter welled up in their hearts. But due to the assault rifles in the army soldiers' hands, they had no choice but to forcibly suppress it in their hearts, causing their faces to turn red. They actually want to go to war with the whole world? Where did this crazy tissue come from? Do they think they are invincible under the heavens just because they develop new individual weapons? It's hilarious. Chapter 365, Biochemical Research Institute and Medical Academy. While the Demon Slayer world was undergoing drastic changes and about to usher in its first true world war, the people and demon from the Demon Slayer world who chose to settle in the Sea Star world were also experiencing their own lives. Drum Kingdom. This place was still as snowy as ever, with cold winds howling, continuous snow mountain, and thick snow accumulation. Of course, the 8 Drum Mountain Peak, each reaching 5,000 meters high, were the most spectacular sight. However, compared to the past, the island seemed much livelier. The small town that was originally at the foot of the mountain peak had now expanded to the size of a city due to continuous expansion. There were more building, wider street, and men, women, old and young coming and going, dressed in thick winter clothes. Originally, let alone a port, this place didn't even have a decent dock. Even the king had to use a long wooden board laid out on the southern shallow beach to board or disembark from a ship. But now, there was a professional port capable of accommodating dozens of large and small ship, and a flat road running through the town directly to the main peak of Drum Mountain. Hundreds of Lipan, which looked like white bear but had long ears, were seen holding brooms, occasionally sweeping the snow off the road. Mixed among them were some small Lipan diligently helping with small brooms. If a passing girl or child came over curiously, they weren't fierce at all. Instead, they allowed the person to touch their ears or fur. These Lipan were originally terrifying wild beasts that lived by eating meat on the island. But during the few months Zephyr was receiving medical treatment for asthma at the medical academy, they were pulled out every day by the cadet from the special training camp to spar. After training, they would receive some meat as a reward. Over time, the Lipan got used to not hunting and living entirely on human feeding. The only downside was getting beaten up once or twice a day. Later, when Zephyr's asthma was cured, the special training camp naturally withdrew. It is said they would visit here once a year. With the help of the construction department, these Lipan reached a cooperation agreement with Drum Kingdom. As long as they could ensure smooth transportation on the main road, Drum Kingdom would provide meat. If they were injured, there would also be doctor to help with medical treatment. As for the foreign tourists arriving by ship, they were basically all coming for the newly built World Hospital. Drum Kingdom's reputation as a great medical nation was already well known in the Grand Line, and now with the world government's medical academy endorsing it, it had directly become the world's medicine center. Any difficult illness or severely ill patient that could not be treated in their own countries would be sent here. Crucially, in recent days, the performance of the World Hospital and Medical Academy had been truly astonishing. Kira, Crocus, and Nakin led an elite team composed of local Drum Kingdom doctor and doctor from various places in the 4 seas. So far, they had not encountered a case file where treatment failed. Recently, Dama Yo and Shinobu Kacho, 2 traditional Chinese medicine doctor from the Demon Slayer world, joined them, greatly strengthening the influence of traditional Chinese medicine in the medical academy. Oh, right. Actually, Marco also held a part-time position as a doctor at the medical academy, but because he was also an Air Force vice admiral, he generally didn't come here. He was more like a military doctor accompanying combat operations. Thump thump thump, in the dean's office on the top floor of the medical academy, following several knocks on the door, Kamado Tanjiro walked in with his sister Nezuko Kamado. Tanjiro had now been assigned to Dragon's Ministry of Police Affairs along with Kyojiro Rengoku and others. However, because Nezuko Kamado needed to receive medical treatment here, he had not gone to the Sabati archipelago to report. Miss Damayo? Tanjiro showed a look of surprise upon seeing Damayo sitting on the sofa, which displeased Yashiro, who was standing behind the sofa. Eh? At this moment, Tanjiro's nose twitched, and he looked at Damayo with surprise and doubt. Miss Damayo's appearance was still so beautiful. Her long black hair was parted at the forehead and styled into a large, low bun. Her pale purple gaze was so gentle, and her rosy lips, combined with the deep purple kimono she wore, exuded the aura of an Eastern beauty. Hey! That's enough. Put away your filthy gaze. Yashiro couldn't help himself and, despite Dean Kira being present, shouted at Tanjiro, which caused Nezuko Kamado, who was biting on a small bamboo tube, to glare angrily. Ah, no. That's not it. Tanjiro quickly waved his hands in explanation, saying, I just noticed that Miss Damayo and Mr. Yashiro's scent has changed. That faint demon energy is completely gone. Tamayo smiled and said. Indeed, it couldn't be hidden from Tanjiro's nose. Yes, Yashiro and I are no longer demon. After receiving a large amount of Mizen's blood provided by the world government, she had spent hundreds of years researching a prescription that could turn demon back into human. She finally completed it 4 days ago and voluntarily became one of the first experiment subjects. What? Tanjiro was greatly surprised, but immediately became ecstatic and grabbed his sister's hand, shouting. Then can Nezuko Kamado also turn back into a human? So noisy, otherworld brat. Suddenly, Dean Kira, sitting behind the office, threw the pin in her hand at Tanjiro's head and said angrily. Sit down quietly and talk. Ah, yes, I'm very sorry, Dean Lord. Tanjiro covered his aching head but wasn't angry. He sat down opposite the office desk with Nezuko Kamado, a nervousness expression on his face. In short, that's the matter. Dr. Tamayo's Demon Slayer prescription can indeed turn demon back into human, so next, you need to make a decision. No need to consider. Please help Nezuko Kamado turn back into a human immediately. Tanjiro said urgently. Bang, Kira slammed the desktop in displeasure and warned. If you dare to interrupt my speaking again, I'll throw you out the window. Sorry, please continue. Tanjiro was truly terrified of this medical academy dean now. Her temper was simply too explosive, completely unlike a doctor with high medical skill. I received an opinion from the Biochemical Research Institute. They hope Nezuko Kamado can maintain her demon physique. As you know, Nezuko Kamado is the only demon who is naturally unaffected by Mezen Kibutsuji's bloodline control and sunlight. She can function normally without drinking human blood, and her blood demon art also has a purifying superpower effect. Her value is very high. This value will make her important to the Biochemical Research Institute, and even the entire world government. However, they also stated they will do their best to help her regain normal consciousness. After listening to Kira's words, Tanjiro looked into Nezuko Kamado's eyes and was silent for a moment, then turned to look at the former. Dean Lord, if I refuse this opinion, will you still turn Nezuko Kamado back into a human? Kira's mouth curved up. She was starting to like this little brat. Of course. The Biochemical Research Institute can't order this old woman's medical academy around. Their opinion is just an opinion. If you've made your decision, you can follow Dr. Tamayo to treat your sister now. 30 minutes later. The Biochemical Research Institute, located on the 5.5th floor of Impel Down, received a reply from the medical academy, and this reply made Dr. Fritz frown. Did Dean Kira not understand Nezuko Kamado's value at all? Fortunately, we still have 2 tubes of blood that Cypher Paul helped us get before, but we'll have to be more frugal with them from now on. After all, they're gone now, sigh. At this moment, Caesar walked into the office, bringing his peculiar laughter with him. Shiro teacher, that Mizen is begging us for some freedom. He just wants to be able to move around within Impel Down. He's willing to obey all our order. Chapter 366, The strength of the other world debuts in the Sea Star world. Within the Biochemical Research Institute on Impel Down Level 5.5, there were actually its own prison cells, primarily used to detain some high-value test subjects. However, the researchers generally didn't call them prison cells, but rather storage rooms. For example, Amber-Lee disease patients, Blue Heart Cabane with blue light hearts, and the two man-eating demons recently added to storage, Mizn Kibutsuji and Notheim. Man-eating demon was the scientific name specifically given to them by the researchers, because the word Unna, demon, sometimes also refers to ghosts. The environment here was actually better than the prison cells on other floors. The ground and walls were made of alloy steel plates mixed with sea stone. The lighting was a bit eerie green, making the atmosphere feel unsettling, but it fit the biochemical theme well. Mizn Kibutsuji sat expressionlessly in one of the storage rooms, the green ring on his neck occasionally flashing with bright radiance. In another storage room across a corridor from him was a Blue Heart Cabane that hadn't undergone wash heart. It always followed its primal instincts, reaching out its hands towards Mizn's location and emitting bloodthirst roars. The storage room next to Mizn housed Notheim. She seemed quite docile, just kneeling quietly on the ground, covering her pale face with her long black hair. Suddenly, a series of footsteps sounded from far to near. This made the Blue Heart Cabane even more agitated and caused a glimmer of hope to bloom in Mizn Kibutsuji's eyes. "Yo, otherworlder man-eating demon boss, I heard you want to come out and stretch your legs?" A moment later, a massive figure appeared outside the bars. A large black shadow blocked the light, but his tone was so flippant, full of mockery. If it were before, Mizn would have undoubtedly tortured and killed the other party without hesitation, but now he could only slowly stand up, calmly looking at the giant outside and negotiating amicably. "Mr. Queen, my value is too wasted just being a test subject." Yes, the person who appeared was none other than the Plague Queen, formerly of the Beast Pirates, who had recently joined the Biochemical Research Institute. A super fat man over 6 meters tall, with golden braided pigtails and a golden beard behind his head, who stretched his white coat round and round. "Is that so? Then tell me, besides providing us with materials for experiments, what else can you do?" Queen asked, bending down curiously. In response, Mizn already had a draft prepared and revealed a confident, refined smile. "First is my blood demon art. I can use my blood to turn people into demons, and then read the thoughts in their hearts. I believe this will have an excellent effect on interrogating prisoners." "Oh, indeed, Magellan and the others should be very interested. I can pass it on for you later, but it's not very useful for our research institute." Queen teased, subconsciously reaching for a cigar. But when his hand instinctively went into his pocket, he suddenly realized he didn't have any tobacco on him. This was a rule at the Biochemical Research Institute: if you wanted to smoke, you had to go to a designated smoking area. This left him smacking his lips regretfully and swallowing. "I can also change my appearance at will, sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes adult, sometimes child. Don't you want to understand the process of this body transformation?" Saying this, Mizn was about to activate his body to turn into a woman, but the green ring on his neck suddenly shone with radiance, stopping him. This made Mizn feel very unhappy in his heart. "I can also distinguish between different types of blood, diseases, and changes and differences in genes. Believe me, as long as I have enough knowledge, I can definitely help you." "That amazing?" Queen was stunned for a moment. They knew Mizn could change his body form, although they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. But distinguishing blood and genes was something they truly didn't know. There was nothing they could do. Im hadn't written this intelligence down at the time, as it wasn't useful for capturing Mizn. "Wait a moment, I'll go talk to the dean. But if that's really the case, then the probability of you being allowed out to move around is quite high. When that happens, I'll take you dancing and rapping." With that, Queen left with heavy footsteps like a dinosaur, causing Mizn Kibutsuji inside to reveal a joyful smile. He actually had very little ambition, he just wanted to live. Of course, it would be best to live comfortably. In his opinion, Impel Down was a good place. He didn't have to worry about the threat of sunlight, there were many people, it was lively, and safety. Moreover, he was very interested in the Sea Star world and other worlds. In the future, he would definitely encounter more interesting things in this Biochemical Research Institute. Just like that thing. Mizn's gaze looked towards the Blue Heart Cabane opposite him. Sabati Archipelago, the final island of the 7 routes in the first half of the Grand Line, and also the island of crime that had served as the world's slave trade center for hundreds of years. After extensive rectification and management by the world government, Marine headquarters, and the Ministry of Police Affairs, it had truly become an amusement island. Adding to that, it was also a fishman safety zone, and many fishermen or mermaids could be seen walking on the streets of various zones on the island. They naturally became a unique scenery of this island, attracting many tourists who came from the countries of each sea, drawn by its reputation. Among them, there were naturally people who harbored thoughts of taking a few mermaids back as guests. But upon seeing the surveillance den mushy with their large eyes slowly wriggling, and then looking at the tall and sturdy Sea King Army patrol teams wearing armor and holding steel forks, and the dark green police figures guarding various locations, they could only suppress their intentions. Then they would enthusiastically walk over and strike up conversations with those beautiful mermaids, showcasing their most gentlemanly side. They had already heard that if a mermaid voluntarily followed, as long as they weren't imprisoned or abused, normal interaction wouldn't be a problem. Although the possibility of this was very low, it was worth a try. Perhaps with their charm, they could truly make a mermaid friend or capture their heart. The island's 60th Great Zone, formerly a Navy base, was now the headquarters of the Public Security Department and a garrison base for the Sea King Army. Of course, there were also office areas for some government departments. The biggest change, it must be said, was that the color of the main building and the wall had changed from sea blue to dark green. The police officers coming and going also wore dark green fitted uniforms, with black belts that clearly cinched the waist, and a cut that highlighted the body's lines, full of masculine handsomeness. And the high-ranking inspectors didn't wear coats of justice, but black trench coats. It was said that this currently very popular set of uniforms was personally designed by Minister Dragon. Speaking of this big shot, logically he should be working at the Ministry of Police Affairs on NI's lobby, but he had always stayed here. Some people had asked Dragon why, when simply appointing a division chief for the Public Security Department would suffice. But Dragon's answer was that he was waiting for the first division chief of the Public Security Department to take their position. On the training ground within the base, hundreds of police officers in green everyday uniforms were seen sitting cross-legged on the ground under the scorching sun and hot temperature, their eyes tightly closed, their chests rising and falling with a certain rhythm. A young man with a right golden and left green pupil, a face wrapped in bandages, black medium-length hair like seaweed, and a white snake coiled around his neck, slowly walked between the ranks. A moment later, he stopped after passing one of the police officers and said coldly, 549,527, your breathing rhythm is wrong, and your spirit is not focused enough. Hearing the reprimand, the police officer opened his eyes and looked up unhappily. Police Superintendent Iguro, is this breathing style really useful? Just sitting like this? Yes, this young man was none other than Serpent Hashira Obani Iguro from the former Demon Slayer Corps. He was now also dressed as a high-ranking police officer, his black trench coat gently swaying behind him. He had originally wanted to join the army like Wind Hashira Seinmai Shinazugawa, or become a constabulary officer responsible for hunting down high-risk criminals like Flame Hashira Kyojiro Rengoku, Water Hashira Jitomiyuka, and Mist Hashira Muchiro Takido. But because Love Hashira Mitsuri Kanraji disliked combat and chose to be a breathing style instructor in the Public Security Department, he also stayed. After arriving here, he was granted the police superintendent rank and the position of serpent breathing style instructor by Minister Dragon. It wasn't just him. Stone Hashira Jamai Haimjima in the distance was now also a stone breathing style instructor. There was also Kyojiro Rengoku's father, the former Flame Hashira Shinjiro Rengoku, as well as the former Thunder Hashira Jigoro Kawajima, who was old and used a cane, and the former Water Hashira Sakanji Yurakadaki. They served as instructors for flame breathing, thunder breathing, and water breathing respectively. Their job was essentially still that of trainers, but the number of cadets they had to train had increased dozens of times. Actually, with their strength comparable to military headquarters officers, field grade, they should logically be at least inspectors. But after all, they were otherworlders, and their stamina, which was weaker than sea-star people of the same rank, determined that this kind of strength could only be considered an explosion. At the Military Police Bureau, the lowest rank was Senior Police Superintendent. I should have said this before, breathing style can enhance your physical ability by at least twofold, it can also activate your mental power, and it can give you the ability to stop your own bleeding. If you think these are useless, you can leave now. Obani Iguro said, staring coldly into the other person's eyes. But you're just talking, and just sitting like this is really annoying. Isn't there a way to practice that involves moving? The police officer who raised the objection had a police sergeant shoulder insignia, equivalent to a military non-commissioned officer, and had indeed been a Marine headquarters sergeant before. In his opinion, so-called training should be about physical ability training or practicing swordsmanship and fist fighting, not just sitting with eyes closed like this. His words clearly resonated with the other police officers around him. Although they didn't say much, they all nodded in agreement. Originally, there was a physical ability training segment, but your physical ability has already met the requirements, and many have even far exceeded them. So you only need to learn the rhythm of the breathing style. Once you master the breathing style, you can practice the accompanying sword techniques. At this moment, Sekenji Yorakadaki, who heard the commotion not far away, raised his voice and shouted towards the surroundings. A police superintendent of the same rank as these instructors stood up and said loudly, "We need to see the actual effect. You instructors should all know this breathing style, right? Please demonstrate it." First form, Shiranui. Just as his voice fell, he felt a ball of raging flame rush towards him from his side. He instinctively wanted to dodge, but the cold touch sensation on his neck froze his body. After all, not every sergeant could encounter a Marine Vice Admiral giving private lessons to get early exposure to the Navy 6 styles. Wow! This police superintendent might not have seen it clearly, but everyone else around saw it clearly. Instructor Rengoku's blade indeed emitted flame. As for the speed displayed, no one paid too much attention to it. Although they couldn't do it, they were all from Marine headquarters and had seen such things before. This is the specific effect of swinging sword techniques after mental power activation. It will make you faster, stronger, and your reactions more acute. Shinjiro Rengoku said in a deep voice, retracting his Nichiren blade. In his opinion, with the physique of these C-star people, if they mastered the breathing style and accompanying sword techniques, they would probably be able to fight him soon. Of course, they would still be much weaker than the current Hashira like Kyojuro Rengoku. Are you really not an ability user? At this moment, the police sergeant whose neck had just been held at knife point looked at him with suspicion. This kind of superpower where a blade swings out flame, how could it not be the ability of an ability user? But Shinjiro Rengoku seemed to have been prepared. He took out a handcuffs from his trench coat pocket and held it above his head. These are sea-stone handcuffs. I presume you are all familiar with them. If anyone has doubts, please have an ability user come up and touch them. Soon, a police officer who claimed to be of the animal system ran over. After personally experiencing the feeling of weakness brought by the sea stone, he certified the authenticity of the handcuffs. After he returned to his position, Shinjiro Rengoku was seen gripping the handcuffs tightly in his left hand and holding the Nichiren blade in his right, performing the first form to 10th form of the flame-breathing style in succession. For a time, in the court, it was as if a flame tornado had appeared and was continuously raging, leaving all the police officers sitting cross-legged on the training ground dumbfounded. On the other side, Dragon also watched this scene through the office window. In his heart, he realized that this should be the first debut of otherworlder strength in the C-Star world. He thought that more and more peculiar abilities would appear in the future. It seemed they had encountered a great era full of wonders. After Shinjiro Rengoku finished performing a set of sword techniques, he proved that he was not a devil fruit ability user. This is flame breathing. Besides this, there are also breathing styles with their own characteristics such as thunder breathing, water breathing, stone breathing, and so on. The mission of us instructors is to teach you the breathing style that is most suitable for you. Immediately after, under everyone's astonished gaze, he used a blade in his hand to cut a gash on his arm. Blood immediately flowed non-stop, and scarlet blood kept dripping onto the ground. Watch carefully. Shinjiro Rengoku narrowed his eyes and stared at the bloody wound on his arm. The next moment, the damaged blood vessels, which were difficult to observe with the naked eye, quickly ligated themselves. A few seconds later, he took the water bottle handed to him by Sekenji Yorakadaki, cleaned off most of the blood, and then raised his arm, which had already stopped bleeding, high. It really stopped bleeding? Is that real? The police officers who were closer widened their eyes. After confirming that no more blood is flowing from the wound, they quickly relayed the news to the people around them. A few minutes later, everyone on the training ground knew. I heard you were all Marines before, soldiers. Then I ask you, is this ability to quickly stop bleeding on the battlefield useful? Shinjiro Rengoku questioned all the police officers loudly. For a moment, there was dead silence. Dragon in the distance, however, gazed at him and murmured to himself. It really is the effect of life return. Chapter 367, Geopen Nation destroyed, Zone Number 2 people. Demon Slayer World, Geopen Nation. 10 days had passed since the army marched out of Okigahara and Cypher Polytact institutions and departments such as the Parliament, Military Department, and Metropolitan Police Department. During this time, the entire country was thrown into chaos, as if gunfire could be heard in every prefecture and city. But just when many Geopenji people thought the war would last for a long time, everything seemed to calm down around the 6th day. Only a few sporadic gunshots remained, proving that something major had indeed happened. On this day, large numbers of army soldiers wearing black military uniform and holding equally black automatic rifle walked through the street and alleys of major cities like Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, Yokohama, Kobe, and Nara. The commotion of their combat boots stepping on the ground was so earth-shattering. They knocked on the door of house after house, bringing the panic-stricken resident inside to the plaza or sufficiently wide street in each city, like driving chickens and ducks. The entire process took a full 6 hours, which wasn't long, mainly because the residents were quite cooperative. Although occasionally someone would imagine something and either kneel down and kowtow frantically or hug their children and wail for mercy. To be honest, this scene actually puzzled many army soldiers. Wasn't it just asking them to gather outside? Why were they so afraid? But they didn't ask further, because Vice Admiral Crocodile had already issued an order strictly prohibiting soldiers from engaging in communication with any other world or without authorization. So, they could only urge them forward with expressionless expression. For example, by kicking them or hitting them with a rifle butt. As long as these Geopengi people moved forward, it was fine. And most of the Geopengi people, facing these fully armed giant divine warrior who were nearly 1.8 meters tall, just numbly walked onto the street to become small black dots in a black tide. There was nothing they could do. In this era, the average height of the Geopengi people was only 1.6 meters, and people who were 1.5 meters tall were also very common. Only Europeans and Americans could reach a height of 1.7 meters or more. Vice Admiral, various places are ready. We plan to start the live broadcast in 15 minutes. At some point, Crocodile had personally arrived at the Tokyo Imperial Palace. He was currently standing in the main hall of the Meiji Imperial Palace, listening to Mima Amatori's report. Alright, let's do that. Crocodile, biting on a cigar, nodded casually, then narrowed his eyes and looked at the Emperor sitting on the throne, completely ignoring the Empress who was trembling beside him. You'd better not have any problems, otherwise you won't need to go to Impel Down. I'll find a place in this world to bury you. Hee, please rest assured, Lord Vice Admiral. I can recite this script backward. Upon hearing Crocodile's warning, the Emperor quickly put on a respectful smile, his attitude appearing very humble. At the same time, outside the Imperial Palace, the major main road of Tokyo City were now packed with people. 2 or 3 army soldiers stood on the rooftop of every small building, scanning the area below. There weren't actually that many people, but the Geopengi people below didn't dare to show the slightest resistance. Because they already knew that all the Class A divisions, Class B division, and police force had been completely annihilated. Only a few small troops who managed to escape were hiding in the deep mountains and old forests, playing at guerrilla warfare. Wow! Suddenly, a series of exclamations and gasps of breath rose from the front of the crowd and spread rapidly in all directions. This scene was also happening in city in various places. What is that? A miracle. A miracle. Oh my god, that person up there seems to be His Majesty the Emperor and Her Highness the Empress. What do you mean seems? That is them. As a Tokyo resident, how could you not remember the faces of the two lord? Because the entire imperial family would meet a citizen at Chouden Hall every New Year, the appearances of the Emperor and Empress were not actually mysterious. But what shocked these people wasn't this, but the giant screens floating overhead. It turned out, the army soldier had activated visual dendenmushi around the Imperial Palace, in the center of major city, and on every main road, and adjusted the projected screen feed size to the maximum. Each one was a standard 300 square meter large screen, and crucially, they were high definition. In this era where there wasn't even a black and white television, it could indeed be called a miracle, which made the Geopengi people believe even more that those army soldier came from the divine realm. At this moment, on the large screen, the 123rd Emperor of the Geopengi nation, Emperor Taisho, rose from his throne and slowly addressed all the Geopengi people across the country. I have been on the throne for 2 years. We, the imperial family, are descendants of Amaterasu Mikami. However, over thousands of years, we have long since devolved from divine children into ordinary people. Takamagahara also abandoned this world and left many years ago. Fortunately, the world government of Blue Star has descended upon our country. A long passage of the Imperial Edict's content was transmitted to every corner of the Geopengi nation through countless visual dendenmushi. All the Geopengi people stood stunned on the spot, watching and listening dumbfounded, as if their soul and spirit had been subjected to some kind of invisible impact. What? Takamagahara doesn't want us anymore? No, that's not right. The crucial point doesn't seem to be that. The crucial point is, does Takamagahara really exist? Also, the world government of Blue Star. So these pitch-black warrior with ridiculously tall body size are actually people from another world. Ah no, divine person. Compared to these citizen of Foot Basin Chicken, derogatory term, the minister in the legation of various countries had a look of sudden enlightenment. So this is a religious force, no wonder they claimed to wage war on the whole world. This makes sense now, preparing for another modern-day crusades, right? It must be the advanced rapid-fire firearms that gave these fanatics enough confidence, making them think they could be invincible in the world with them. As for their tall body size, it's most likely some kind of evil medicine. The side effect probably aren't minor. On the other side, the emperor's speech was also nearing its end. I hereby solemnly announce my abdication as emperor, the dissolution of the imperial family, and the destruction of the Geopan nation. All its right to rule is handed over to the world government, to witness the peace and prosperity of the world together with everyone, and jointly enjoy the happiness of divine grace. I have great hopes for this. After speaking, the emperor was seen bowing 3 times towards everyone, and then left the civilian screen feed with the empress. No. His Majesty the Emperor. In an instant, piercing scream rang out from the dense crowd. Large numbers of middle-aged and elderly person knelt on the ground, wailing, sobbing uncontrollably. And the younger men and women looked at each other, at a loss. So, they were no longer people of the Geopan nation? The minister of various countries were also troubled. What should they call this country from now on? The world government? What a joke, who would recognize that? Just then, another person walked out on the large screen. As soon as this person appeared, the noise in various places gradually quieted down. This person was wearing a yellow suit and a black coat draped over his shoulders. He had slick back hair, narrow eyes, and a thick cigar bitten in his wide grin. The crucial thing was his height, definitely over 2 meters, estimated to be nearly 3 meters. I am Sir Crocodile, and also a Vice Admiral of the World Government Army Headquarters.